Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, May the 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo. This is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners, Pitkin County, Colorado. It is 1 p.m. We are graciously joined by about a half a dozen Holy Cross folks, including the President, Brian Hannigan. So wonderful to see you.
I can do that. Sure. Okay.
I have to go sit in a different seat.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is your presentation.
Great. I'll swing over here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here today to give you a little bit of an update of all things Holy Cross. I do want to recognize the 3 staff members and 1 board director with us today. Director Bob Gardner, who represents this district, and then we've got 2 of our community energy systems leads and our executive coordinator, Betsy Seymour, with me. So we obviously can't do anything without a talented workforce and a great leader oriented board of directors. And so I'm glad that they're here with me today. So I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1, just give you a brief update of where we are on achieving our strategic goals and vision of providing reliable, safe, and affordable electricity in a way that's increasingly sustainable, and then specifically address what we would like to suggest is our capacity to serve. In a world where everything's being electrified, there are naturally understandable concerns around the capacity of the electric system to support that. And I hope by the end of our discussion, any concerns that you have an opportunity to ask questions and get those concerns addressed. So I'll just drive into it. As you know, we are the rural electric cooperative that serves the Roaring Fork as well as the Eagle Valleys and the southern portion of the Colorado River Valley. We've got about 46,500 members. We are roughly about 3% the size of XL Energy, if you want to put us in context to the biggest utility in the state. And that's by all measures, whether it's miles of distribution line, number of employees, size of the electric system. The one thing that we have going for us is that at the end of the year 2025, we completed our first year with an average renewable energy content of 85%, which is roughly double what it was when I began service as CEO back in 2017. So we're well on the path to our goal of achieving 100% renewables by 2030. And some months we're actually getting quite close to that goal, which is nice to have the time to do that. As I mentioned at the open, it's about safely providing reliable and affordable power. Those 3 things have always been the hallmark of our service to you since 1939 when we began. What we've added to that is a 4th pillar around sustainability, and the focus on clean energy is truly a co-equal focus. We are not sacrificing any one of the other principles to achieve whether it's reliability for the sake of affordability or affordability for the sake of being unsafe, right? We want to achieve all 4 of these pillars all at once. And I think let me just skip ahead. As we look at our progress so far, I'm proud to say that we're really doing something which is tremendously difficult, and that is achieving all 4 of these pillars at the same time. You can see on this chart the 10-year history of our main metrics that we use to assess on the upper left-hand side the safety of our operations. This is the number of injuries per 200,000 employee hours, or roughly 100 FTE over the course of a year. And as you can see, over the last 5 years in particular, those numbers have been remarkably low and leading amongst our utility peers. In the upper right-hand corner, you see our system reliability. You see a consistent downward trend from 2015 on the left through to 2024. Last year, we had an uptick in outage minutes. That still equates, though, even on the far right-hand side, to less than 1 outage per customer per year on average. So if you have an outage, that outage is generally less than an hour in duration. And when you compare that to others that are providing service in mountainous, remote environments like our own, that's about a factor of 4 to 6 better than comparable utilities throughout the West. even with what we would say is a bit unlucky of a year in 2025 relative to our normal practice. Part of that is how we switch around the system to allow for maintenance. Sometimes an outage in the wrong place at the wrong time can be more severe and affect more people. We obviously can't control the falling of trees or the invasion of squirrels or bats into our equipment. We can try to protect against that, and we do every day try to operate and maintain our system to keep the lights on for the most people for the most amount of time. Lower left, you see our affordability. Our residential rate at 11 cents per kilowatt hour is 40% below the national average and about a third below the statewide average here in Colorado. And that is a tremendous deal when you compare it to some of the prices that are paid outside of Colorado. For example, my mom lives in Southern California, and her rate is about 4 times this. And I can attest to the level of service that comes along with. We are definitely maintaining our affordability. We recognize that the energy bill is a challenge for those for whom everything is a challenge. And that if we can do our part to ensure that living here is something that's achievable by folks from all walks of life and socioeconomic strata, that's something that we're committed to doing. Running an efficient business, procuring clean power at low costs, these are all things that go into us being on the left side of that graph, which is how we compare to other utilities in Colorado, including co-ops, municipals, and investor-owned utilities. And certainly here in our local community, we compare favorably to our peers. I have not done the specific comparison lately, but I would put us up against other providers in our area. And then lastly, I think where we are definitely leading the state. You can see the uptick in our sustainability content, 75% in 2024 and 85% in 2025, already satisfying the clean energy plan that we filed with the state of Colorado for 2030. We achieved that in 2025, and we're on track again this year to exceed that 80% number by a significant margin. And I think that is really an area that we can all be proud of. Just a quick primer on how we got to 85% and how we're planning to get to 100%. It starts with robust measures for energy efficiency. And there, I think we really enjoy a great partnership with the county and with the towns and the communities that have authority in this area around building codes and standards. We want our electricity to be used efficiently. Not only does that minimize the environmental impact, but that minimizes the affordability impact as well. Use less, pay less. Low cost, pay less. Right? And if we can do both, use less and keep it low cost, then we can make that truly more affordable than other resources that are out there for energy services and needs. And that also helps us minimize, as I'll talk about in a moment, the need for us to build infrastructure. If we're using energy efficiently, we're delivering services with less total consumption, we don't have to build bigger poles. We don't have to string new wire. We don't have to build bigger infrastructure at substations and transformers. All of that goes into the bottom line and the bills that people pay in future years. And so really energy efficiency is something we want to lean into, we want to partner with and are partnering with your staff, but also organizations like CORE that are devoting their efforts to try to improve energy efficiency throughout the valley. The second element of our strategy, and something that's gotten a lot of attention, is our shift away from a fossil-based resource mix to something that is more wind and solar and hydro predominated. We have large solar farms in our area, including the 5 megawatt farm here at Pitkin Solar. We've got battery storage coming onto the system at places like Rifle and Parachute and the CMC campus at Spring Valley. We're working today with you all to bring on energy storage in this part of the valley as part of our microgrid project, which we think is really awesome and leading. It's a true microgrid involving multiple customers, not just a home with a solar panel and a battery on it. It's much more complex than that. Those are all elements that are clean and dispatchable resources that come into our power supply mix. They're local. The third pillar, adding not just big grid projects, but also local clean energy resources in our communities that create clean power at low cost, but also build resilience, because something that's inherently closer to the consumer has fewer things in between to go wrong, right? Fewer lines that can be compromised, fewer pieces of equipment that might fail, fewer impacts from a wildfire between here and there. So we are a big believer in local clean energy resources, both within the community, connected to our distribution grid, and also on rooftops and in garages, at homes and businesses. And that's the fourth pillar around distributed energy resources. In particular, we want to work with those folks that have these rooftop solar or behind the meter battery systems to harness those resources on days when they're not needed locally to help support the grid, right? If you have a lot of production of solar on your rooftop, rather than exporting it onto the grid when all the other solar is shining, can you store it in a battery and give it to us later when our solar resources aren't producing as much anymore? We'll be able to pay you with a bill credit or with a time of use rate for the ability to provide that important grid service that's needed to fit the available supply of renewables, which we can't control, right? It's the wind, it's the sun, against the demand for that electricity, which we also can't control, because those are your decisions to make. And yet, to keep the lights on, we have to balance supply and demand in all places and at all times. And things like batteries, managed EV charging, thermostats that can be set smartly and rise and fall with the wind and the sun, those are all great distributed energy resources that, lastly, if we're encouraging those as part of smart electrification programs, again, we're not adding more electric demand when the system's already at its peak. We're fitting that in where there's already space. There's resources to serve it. There's grid capacity to support that. That actually helps put downward pressure on rates because we're using the same infrastructure to serve more kilowatt hours. So same amount of cost for more volume. That allows us to manage our rates in a more effective way than just simply building the peakier, non-scientific term, but building the peakier because everybody always wants to use their stuff right when they get home or right when they wake up in the morning. If we can offset that with programs and incentives and also technologies, then we can make a better, more efficient use of the existing system and the capacity that we have today. So that's our strategy, and particularly as we go from 85 to 100, we're going to move from left to right. We're going to have to rely more on smaller, more local, more flexible resources because it simply isn't, we're not possible or we're not capable of getting larger renewables without going way beyond the demand for electricity more often and in effect having oversupply that we then have to store or sell potentially at a lower cost and lesser value for our members. So let me turn now to this question around the capacity to serve, and I want to just be very clear. Everything I'm going to say from here on out is we absolutely have the capacity to serve you, both now and in the future. And what I am showing here is a summary of the kind of key characteristics of our system within Pitkin County. And you can review these at your leisure. The things that are the most important are the last two bullets at the bottom. The historical peak load, so the amount of electricity used simultaneously at any one given time. When we look back 10 years, the most you've ever used is that 128.5 megawatts figure. And this is coming from our engineering team, from our metering data that's collecting the actual consumption every 15 minutes, and we're recording it in a really nice time series, so it's great data to have. And when we look at the forecast peak load for 10 years from now, we see that number growing based on the assumptions that we've gathered working with your staff, looking at projected growth rates, thinking about the rates of electrification that we've observed and what we might see with policies, including the energy code revisions, the building code revisions, everything that's in the queue. We look at a forecast peak load, not including the city of Aspen itself, because they do their own thing. We see it growing from 128.5 to 154.3. Doing the math, that's about a 20% increase in total peak demand for capacity from the electric grid over a 10-year period. That's pretty robust. So we're not making assumptions to try to lowball things here deliberately. We're saying, look, reasonable growth projections, we're looking at about a 20% uptick in the capacity of the grid that we need to serve you. So the question is, do we have that capacity today? Well, if you look at the hourly actual consumption shown on the left here in this histogram, you see that most of the time it is well below the 128.5 peak that we've hit historically, and even further below the 154 that we're projecting for 2035. Why is that? Consistently, that peak is hitting between Christmas and New Year's for obvious reasons. And it's hitting for a very brief window in the peak holiday season when you've got hotels that are full, the lifts are running, the snow's still being made on the mountains, and all the activities are at their highest. The rest of the year, we're actually operating more in 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100, depending on the time of year and the nature of the activities that are going on. And yet, as an electricity company, we have to build the infrastructure to serve the peak load at the highest time of the year. So we have to build a system that's capable of supporting the 128 now, the 154 in 10 years' time. What that means is there is a lot of capacity outside of that 1 or 2 weeks in the winter to bring on a lot of other electrification without changing the existing infrastructure that's in place, without upgrading the existing grid. And those are the bar charts there on the right-hand side. We've evaluated what is the capacity of the existing transformers today. And we look at what's going on at the Aspen substation, we look at the Snowmass substation, we look at all of the ones that serve every area of Pitkin County, and there's a 63% margin for additional growth over existing peak load just with the equipment that we have in place today. When we look at the feeders, the actual lines themselves, the cables that run on the wires, that number grows to 90%. And we have a regular plan to make infrastructure improvements, to upgrade things at the end of life, to get better at how we manage our voltage control, which is keeping the pressure of electrons, if you will, constant in a wire to reduce the wear and tear on the wire, to create switching opportunities so that if something does go out of service, kind of like a traffic jam, we can reroute power around the accident on the grid and make sure that we can deliver it to consumers no matter what. So there's lots of stuff that we're doing anyway, and when we factor that in and we look at the capability of the infrastructure, our conclusion is we have more than enough capacity to serve you, and that your electrification concerns really are, I think, within the bounds of what we're able to do. Now, are there going to be challenges in that 1 or 2 weeks out of the year? Absolutely. When the system's bumping up against that peak capacity, we need to be mindful that we are not just electrifying in a not smart way that stresses the infrastructure at those peak times. But there are lots of ways to mitigate that. And even with that stress, we're already talking about a system that's largely designed, as you could see with the transformers, to go as high as around 200 megawatts. And even 10 years from now, we're looking at a peak of 150. So even in those 2 weeks, there's still a lot of headroom without having to upgrade things to support electrification. So lots of capacity in lots of places. And so we've done this work by substation. We've looked at the Crystal substation that serves the Crystal River Valley, forecast peak load of 25 megawatts, and we've broken it down for this substation alone, and you can see most of the time we're between 5 and 12.5%. And we've got capacity at 28 megawatts on the transformer and 26 megawatts on the feeder. Right now, no significant capacity, but if it grows out the way that we're projecting in 10 years' time, we probably will need to make a normal upgrade and make sure that we're upgrading today's equipment with equipment that is fit for purpose as we go forward as part of our normal repair and replacement life cycle. Similarly, when we look at Basalt, a forecast peak load just under 32 megawatts, and you can see the feeders, the 5 feeders that come out of that, serving different parts of the area. 35 megawatt capacity. Today, we're between 5 and 15 most of the time. Now, here at Basalt, we have seen the demand during very cold weather when the demand is the highest. We've seen it bump up against the transformer capacity. That's the red bar that you see there on the right-hand side. And so that's one of the reasons why in our 10-year work plan, we have that unit scheduled for replacement as part of our existing replacement cycle. And as you can see in the bottom bullet, we're going to replace it with a transformer that's twice the current size of what we have today to support continued growth, just population and general use, but also to create headroom for electrification. And that's, built into our financial plan already. That would happen anyway, but it's going to give us enough headroom to support the electrification needs in that area. Looking at snow mass, 32 to 38 megawatts, and I'm assuming you've had a chance to review these. You can definitely see summer demands on the left and winter demands on the right. Clear signatures there. Our assessment is no significant capacity concerns. We're well below the existing transformer and feeder limits. We're well below the overall assessed capacity from our engineering team. And what's nice about this is the way that the system is wired. Literally, we can use the Snowmass substation to support extra demand from Basalt and from Aspen kind of as a relief valve. The way that the two substations are interconnected, we can switch and route power so that Snowmass with its extra capacity can take the load off of Basalt should it be impacted and congested in the near future. And so near term, we even have an impact, a contingency to allow for some continued growth at Basalt. And then lastly, the Aspen substation, which serves county area, but also the city itself. We're looking at 50 to 60 megawatts or so roughly in 2035. And again, our conclusion, no significant capacity concerns here. We do look at replacements at the end of their expected life for the transformers in 2030. As we get to that point and enter the procurement cycle, we'll be assessing, do we need same size? Do we need bigger size? Should we err on the side of having a little extra capacity, recognizing that that carries a little extra cost? But at this point, we're not seeing the need to rush that process with the normal and planned growth in load on that substation. There's lots of other things that we can do. So far, we've talked about what we in the industry call these wires alternatives. It's just building the grid bigger. We have a lot of other options, and I mentioned smart electrification at the outset. Whether it's adding behind the meter solar and storage that reduces the demand for electricity from the grid, so that reduces that peak load and avoids the need to replace or rebuild capacity because more of it's being generated at the home, at the business, right? It takes strain off the grid when we do those things. Better coordination of local resources, again, to take strain off the grid, reduce the draw of electricity by orchestrating the supply and the demand behind the substation in a more active way. Managed charging, whether it's with EVs that consumers own or fleet vehicles, encouraging them to charge at different times when we have capacity and we have the resources to do it. When the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, we can align those to optimize the use of the grid, and we can do that for building and heating electrification, for heat pumps of all shapes and sizes, for cooling, as we see summer loads now starting to mean air conditioning. So we have a lot of flexibility in managing the demand side of the equation, avoiding the need to build something bigger and load that up into the costs of the utility bills for future years. The last thing is we also can provide not just programs and rebates, but we can provide financial incentives through our rate design. We recently implemented a capacity charge, a peak demand charge, a demand charge in our residential electric bills. This was a design element of the rate structures for large residential and large commercial loads for many, many years, and we've now expanded that to include all Holy Cross customers, albeit at a lower level for a smaller demand on the system. What that does is that actually puts a cost on using everything at once, and it does that for a very deliberate reason, because we would love to have people stagger their demands for electricity over a broader period that is actually easier for our infrastructure to support, rather than stack it all at once like you see on the left side, where it increases that peak demand and makes it more likely that someday we will have to build something bigger when everybody's stacking all of their loads on top of one another and pushing that peak higher and higher and higher. So we're creating a little bit of an incentive. You can save money on your electric bill by just changing how you use your electricity. You can avoid that some part of that demand charge, not entirely, as you can see, but you can spread that out and actually help us help you avoid having to pay more in your electric bills for the infrastructure in future years. We think that that is also a robust way to make sure that everybody understands the costs of having the capacity to serve, that we all have to pay for some element of it together. Lots of things that consumers can do. Again, rooftop solar used locally, batteries that help mitigate that peak demand and reduce that pull from the grid. These are all things that can also manage impacts as we try to make the most out of our existing infrastructure. So long story made short, we have the capacity to serve you both now and in the future with any level of electrification that is being considered, any level of changes to the codes that are being considered. We see more than enough in what we have and what we're planning to invest in anyway. Why that is important is, as we look through the lens of affordability, about half of what Holy Cross members pay for right now is the cost of the power supply itself. And our team has done a fantastic job in cycling out some of the more expensive fossil-based assets and bringing on some of the less expensive renewable energy resources that we've been able to lock in long-term fixed price contracts for the next couple of decades. So that's kind of like a gift that's going to keep on giving on that half of the bill. Now the other half of the bill, to manage affordability, it's really around managing our investments in the stuff and the people and the trucks that we use to maintain it. And if we don't need to build a bigger system, then we won't need to pay for it in a future energy bill. And so everything from being smart about investments in our infrastructure, to setting our rates right, to investing in consumer-sided resources and energy programs to adopt that, it's all designed to optimize our infrastructure and ultimately manage as low as possible while still maintaining safe, reliable, and sustainable service, the affordability of the services that we provide. So I know that's a lot, but our engineers are really proud of what they're doing, and they wanted to share a lot of data with you, and I think any of us would be very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Greg. Commissioner Postman, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. That was great. And I did read it in advance, but I had questions just about things like what is the nameplate thing versus the nomenclature. I wasn't quite certain. So maybe just an explanation of some of that. But I did want to ask, do you have an example of a smart home? I have an old home that was a smart home in 1978, right? And I'm afraid of putting all this technology in it, which will fail, and I won't remember the password, and is it going to be worth it? But I love the idea of having a home that tells me when to stagger my loads, so that it's just something that it will help me do. And I'm just wondering, is there an example of that? I'm going to throw these questions at you. Fire resiliency for the system. We've got a group of pictures here of fire pole, or electric poles that look like they're ready to catch fire. How is your fire resiliency? And then for the things that are coming, like balcony solar or vehicle to grid storage, I have 150 kilowatt hours of storage in 2 electric vehicles that I can't really use to keep the house going, instead of having to pay so much for power walls.
Right.
And so questions about that. Do you see that coming? Then finally, the ski company's talking about a gondola network. I've been working as hard as I can to electrify our bus system. We've got 11 new electric buses arriving this month, I believe. We all hear about AI data centers, so it sounds like you guys have got it covered, but I just wanted to throw those out.
Okay, so let's walk through those one by one. When we talk about nameplate capacity, it's like if you've got a refrigerator and it says it's capable of holding 28.x cubic feet of capacity, that's how much stuff you can put in there. And nameplate capacity is how much electricity we can push through a piece of infrastructure.
Okay.
So it's kind of the occupancy of the room, right? Functional equivalent. How many people can you put on the bus? So when we say we're going to build something with, this much, 56 versus 28, there's twice as much electricity as we can get through there. So
Okay.
that's the way
All right.
to look at it. And there's units and stuff. We can talk about that offline. Your second question. 'Cause I
Smart
knew-
home example.
Smart home example. The best one was the work that we did at Basalt Vista with Habitat for Humanity and you all some time ago. Those were very early stage smart homes, and I think they gave us some really great insights on how to combine on-site solar, on-site batteries, appliances like heat pumps and hot water heaters and EV charging that could read the state of the solar production, read the state of the battery, interact in an algorithmic kind of early AI sort of way to say, if I have power that's being produced locally, I'm going to use that instead of pulling from the grid. If I have a battery that's charged up and I can use that, even if the solar's not producing, I might use that battery to discharge stored energy. You can think about, once I plug in the vehicle, maybe my heat pump takes a break so that I'm not stacking everything, I'm staggering.
Right.
And in that case, you're just simply saying, here's what I want my home to look and feel like. I want it to be a certain temperature. I want it to use all renewables, so don't draw down energy from the grid if you can avoid it. I want the costs to be within this boundary, right? You can set the parameters and let the devices and the algorithms kind of all work themselves out. That technology exists today. It's in various stages of maturity, and the biggest challenge is that the solar panel can't talk to the battery, can't talk to the vehicle quite the same way, and getting that interoperability and then having all of those talk to the grid too. These are challenges that we continue to work on as a utility to try to harvest a lot of the value that those devices can
So this
bring
is on the horizon. It's not here.
It's here in various stages. I think some of you may have solar and batteries already. That's the early strains of what a
Right.
truly smart home would be when you bring in the demand side and the energy efficiency parts of the equation.
I did want to jump to fire resiliency because
Yeah.
Jeffrey may have had that question also.
So we are, as far as wildfire goes, we have a published wildfire mitigation plan that's on our website that's been there since 2023. It involves obviously being aware from a situational awareness standpoint of what the operating conditions are, what our wildfire preparedness levels should be based on the day's humidity and soil moisture and fuel content and so on. Managing our operations, not rolling trucks into dry grass when we don't have to during a red flag warning, for example. Even operating the system in different ways where our system is slightly more sensitive. When a tree falls on a wire, we're not trying to re-energize that assuming that the tree has fallen off the wire, because if the tree's still there, we might start a fire. Hardening the system, wrapping poles in protective equipment to keep them from catching on fire, building protections around our system to help keep birds away so that they don't start themselves on fire, for example. Operations and maintenance, including inspection, right? If you see something that doesn't look right, call us. We'll come out and we'll have a look at it, and we'll make sure that it's robust and fit for purpose. We're going around testing our poles. We're going around inspecting our rights of way. We're going around with drones that have cameras that are observing it from all angles, and even taking thermal sensors to look at where it might be getting hot, where the electricity isn't moving through the metal efficiently. We're doing a lot of things to make sure that we're not starting a wildfire. Even with that, though, there may come times where the wildfire risk is so high that we may not be able to operate the electric system. The so-called PSPS events, the one that we almost had to but didn't go through are things that we're in the process of developing protocols for, interacting with your emergency response, your critical infrastructures, to make sure that if we should ever have to do it, and I hope we don't ever have to, but if we make the decision to do that, we make it in a way which protects the safety and the capability of the community that we serve. So I would refer you to that plan, and we can certainly come back and talk more about it in detail if you're interested.
Thanks, or just email it to us. And the last one was just about future balcony solar. It's on people's minds.
Yeah, we worked very
grid.
closely with the Colorado Solar and Storage Association on the bill that last I checked was making its way through the legislature. It may have been adopted. That's a great option for those that don't have rooftops for rooftop solar. Those will plug in at the consumer side. Those will offset their demand for electricity from the Holy Cross grid. So that's another way in which some of the peak capacity concerns, such as they would be, can be ameliorated. And those are great options for consumers to the extent that they find them cost effective relative to our electric service. I'm going to be honest, we're going to try to compete on price with those two, and we're going to try and compete with those on renewable energy content and on reliability of service. I think we provide a pretty good deal from the grid standpoint. Mm-hmm. But if a consumer wants to invest in technologies for their home or their business because they want a plan B or they just want it a certain way, they should have that right. And we're looking forward to supporting that in a way which also supports the grid. And part of our work with COSA was to make sure that we can plug those things in safely and that they don't cause a risk to the grid, to your neighbors, to people who work on the lines. And I think we're satisfied that the bill currently does that.
Great. Thanks.
I'd like to take you back to the community level. So I think, we touched a little bit on wildfire. We still have some blind spots in terms of our network, namely the top of Independence Pass. We worked with Xcel Energy, for example, to bring up AI wildfire cameras in Meredith and Thomasville. So our one remaining blind spot, I think, is the top of Independence. And I think the risk is probably less Holy Cross lines, but more campfires.
Sure.
So, but I think we have to think of that as a community. As we look over the next 5 to 10 years, we've got a number of large-scale projects that likely will come online, from the lumberyard to the draw site. So additional housing units that likely will be all electric, as well as the replacement of airport infrastructure, most likely, as well as fixed-based operator. And when you look at, if you look at it at the micro level, a home that goes from 200 amp to 1200 amp, in order to provide just a single point service, now we're looking at really these community level projects that are, I think, game changers in terms of your delivery. We have some early infrastructure with the microgrid in place that should be expanded before its end of life, because I think it's probably at 1/4 or 1/5 of what the envisioned capacity probably is. So can you reflect more on the community scale and sort of, the homeowner has a little pain to go from 200 to 1200, if you will. We're envisioning, for example, it's called MSAITW, if you haven't gotten our acronym yet, the most sustainable airport in the world.
Okay.
And so that's predicated on an all-electric with, MERV 13 filters and carbon filters. So it's everything soup to nuts is really looking at, how do we make the greenest community we can in these large-scale services that we need to deliver as a board and as a community. So.
Yeah, reflecting on that, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a very opportune time with these large projects coming to make sure that as you are designing for the services that you're delivering, you're also designing in a way that is compatible with the energy infrastructure that you have. Part of the reason why we have Mike and Jeanette on our staff is to make sure that at the very outset, when there's a new development coming online, we take advantage of the fact that the best time to make changes in that new development is that it be at the very beginning. In addition, knowing those things are coming, we can stage our construction needs and our upgrade requirements. We can procure the equipment. We can have the lead times with supply chains as challenging as they are. We can kind of factor that into our overall strategy with a minimal amount of fuss. And so whether it's the MSAITW, I think it was,
Well done.
or whether it's a project like the lumberyard, really thinking about how you design it from an energy system standpoint is absolutely critical and something that I feel tremendously passionate about. We are ready to have that conversation. In many cases, that conversation is already underway, and we thank you for that. We would just ask that that continue to happen anytime something pops up as a proposal that goes to P&Z, for example. Like, hey, have you guys talked with Holy Cross? Have you thought about how that might work? Just quickly on the wildfire cameras, our camera network it's a community effort. You all have invested, we've invested, the fire agencies have invested, other counties have invested. We have really a robust network for fire detection, and jumping on those small starts when they're small is really critical for fire suppression purposes, and the state will tell you that that is number one part of their strategy in mitigating the spread. When they grow beyond a certain level, you're really not talking about putting them out anymore. You're talking about containing them and keeping them. And we don't ever want to get to that if we can avoid it. And so I think having the conversation around where are the holes in our network and how can we fill them might be a very good thing. I'm finally allowed to talk about it, but we have a federal funded grant that Holy Cross is actually leading on behalf of 35 other co-ops in the country. Part of that grant goes for things like wildfire cameras and weather stations and other sort of nuts and bolts that allow us to do a better job at seeing whether it's weather conditions or whether it's fire starts. And so if there are needs that you've identified, I'd personally love to hear about those to make sure that those get into the mix. One last thing on things like the lumberyard or the airport. Remember, if you're pairing the demand for electricity with on-site generation of the electricity, that is avoiding the need to tax the grid delivery infrastructure. And so that's where we really see the value of thinking through how do we pair available solar energy capacity, in particular, available battery storage, maybe some geothermal, including some thermal energy networks, which are starting to be more talked about as an alternative to natural gas for heating and cooling. So I think there's some creative thinking that we can do, and like I said, it's better to do that at the beginning than at the end when we really don't have a whole lot we can do by that point to adjust.
So follow-up community question, sorry. Follow-up community question. Burial of power lines. So there's a few projects in the valley that are currently slated, one of which I can name is working with Holy Cross, but all of a sudden costs have nearly doubled compared to when the tax or the HOA fee went into place. So how can we work with those communities? I'm searching around for grants, and I'm not finding any at the DOLA or Northwest COG level. And I don't know what to say to the homeowners at the community level that clearly invested, thought they were fully funded, and we come into, I mean, I'm not blaming you for two wars,
Right.
but we're in a different funding scenario than we were when they funded these projects.
We are indeed in a different funding scenario, and I think where we used to use a rule of thumb of about $1 million per mile just on flat level non-Pitkin County ground, it's much more. Given the nature of the terrain and the soil type, right? If you're expecting rocky, loose soil, you're going to drill at a much slower rate and a higher cost than, a greenfield through the valley. And we need to take those things into account when we're doing routing, along with all the other factors. Right now, unfortunately, the federal government's focus is on transmission technology, not really on distribution system hardening. We do have one project that I mentioned was supported by this DOE wildfire grant. That's been selected elsewhere. I think part of what we ought to do is look at the overlay between those undergrounding projects and the wildfire risk assessments we've done and prioritize with scarce resources where are the must-haves and where are the nice-to-haves. And maybe if it's a nice to have, understand that the risk in those communities, while not zero and while maybe not acceptable to those community members, might not be as severe as some of the risks in the other areas. and that there may be a rationale to wait until the current supply chain crunches and material environments change where we might see costs come down. If I had a crystal ball to predict inflation, I wouldn't be the Holy Cross CEO. I'd be somewhere else. But we are seeing those same cost increases in everything that we're doing too.
I'm glad you're not in Jerome Powell's seat, so.
So am I.
Yeah.
Thank you. Francie?
I have several questions, Brian, but first I have to say that you just talked for almost 45 minutes. I think you said, once. I think that's a record.
I think I took a breath once too.
It was
I don't know that
amazing.
that's a good thing.
It's amazing. You have the gift of gab at the nth degree. It's really quite remarkable. Okay, so when you talk about helping people upgrade, when we built our place, for some reason, we only had 200 amps for 2 houses. It was quite a while ago. So is it possible to get help for upping your amp capacity? Or are you just on your own for that?
No, it's absolutely something that you can get help for from ourselves, from the State Energy Office, from groups like CORE here in the Valley. There are emerging panel technologies that will also not just increase the capacity size, but also allow you to shift the capacity of your panel between the various breakers in your home, depending on what's using that.
Right, I get it.
So it's almost like a air traffic controller, so to speak, for your electric panel. Those technologies obviously cost more, but they may be worth more to you in the long run in terms of your capabilities. And we certainly can talk more about the programs that we have in place for that.
I'll come in. So you can get, for instance, a designated, like your EV could be designated for the next few hours, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need a panel to do that. Depending on the EV charger technology that you're using, some of those can be set with your phone manually, or they can autonomously interact with other devices to figure out the right time to charge to reduce the demand on your panel.
Great. That was one question. There's been a lot of sort of discussion in magazines and newspapers and stuff about you don't have to turn off your lights anymore. They have such a small impact on the grid that forget about turning off your lights. But when you're talking about maximum loads at certain times of day, if you're running on a small residential scale, if you're running your dishwasher and your refrigerator is always going, doesn't it make sense to turn your lights off?
I would think so, if only looking through the lens of that light is using electricity that's running the cash register on the bill that you're going to pay.
Yeah, okay.
So I think there's an economic reason separate and distinct from capacity on the grid.
But the capacity on the grid is crazy small for lights?
Especially if you're using a LED light, yeah, it's crazy small. If you still got those old incandescents, those can be quite considerable.
Can't even get incandescents anymore, can you?
You can get a lot of things from a lot of places, Commissioner.
And I thought there was something coming up where if you have rooftop solar, you have to have battery backup, and even as low as 5 kilowatt hours. Is that coming?
Not from us. That may be something that you have in your own codes, and it's something that, frankly, we would welcome. Because right now, solar on its own produces just when the sun is shining.
Right.
There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it.
Yeah.
And when we have a lot of just solar, it all produces at the same time. Mm-hmm. And if there's not enough demand to soak up that energy gets exported back onto the grid. And because of the good graces of the state of Colorado, that gets the full 11 cents in our rate structure compensation for that exported energy. And in the early days of solar, that was a pretty good incentive to get that solar going, particularly at a time when the utility wasn't really interested in doing solar on its side of the meter. Mm-hmm. Now we've got large-scale solar projects in the same geographic area that are half or even more the cost of that exported energy back onto the grid. And so when we can get solar for 4 cents or 5 cents down the road versus 11 cents here, that starts to kind of strain some of the economics, right? It's great for the homeowner, but it might not be great for everybody as a whole. And you probably recall me having talked about this a couple of years ago in the context of some previous rate changes. If you can pair that on-site solar with an on-site battery, now you can use all of your production for your needs.
Right.
And you can actually get more value out of the thing that you bought. Right? And so while we're not saying, hey, everybody should have a battery, we'd love to see that happen, because that actually, again, minimizes the impact on the grid, maximizes the value to the consumer, and actually allows us to bring more solar on, not less, from all the different sources, wherever they may be.
So you are required to pay the same amount for energy that you buy as you
That
do
is-
for energy that the consumer buys?
That is the state's net metering law. The state requires us to do that for all systems that are 10 kilowatts in capacity or less on the residential side and 25 kilowatts or less on the commercial side. Holy Cross does it to 25 no matter what, whether you're a homeowner or a business owner. That's our policy.
Awesome. I just have one more thing to say, and that is that I would love to see the county and Holy Cross do another basalt Vista. I mean, to me, that's like a crown in all of our portfolios. So, just would love to see that.
Let's have that conversation. We learned a ton in that project, which, you know, you read in the energy press and even in the mainstream media about virtual power plants, VPPs. Basalt Vista was VPP before that was even cool, right? 2019 was a really great opportunity for us to learn about how our programs should be structured, so that even if you just took a piece of Basalt Vista and deployed it everywhere, how could we do that in a way which could truly scale? So
Yeah, it would
thank
be
you
great.
to you all for supporting that, and we can do more.
Great. Thank you.
Introducing you to Ted Mann. Commissioner Mann just joined us, Brian Hannigan.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually had dinner at a Brats and Watts up the street about 10 years ago. Holy Cross was giving out these nifty little camp lights. Some of them are still in use. I think it's been about 10 years, and they come out in the
still work.
summer.
That's still one of the favorites. People will come to the events now and
Yeah.
like, oh, where's the camp light? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
so you still do it. Okay.
There you go.
Well, that was fun. So good to see you again. I thought the questions were excellent. A lot of things were covered already. So I guess to go back to something Greg hinted at more regionally is on the big hot topic of data centers. So there's probably not a lot in your service area that is suitable for that, considering, you know, cost and all the constraints, but maybe out in the western region. But I guess the question is, watching this Salt Lake City data center get approved last night of like enormous scale. I think they said it was 40,000 acres that was allotted to them, and it's supposed to use more electricity than the entire state of Utah. I have to ask, like, if something like that comes online, and this is being debated among other counties right now in Colorado that are in favor of data centers, like, even if you put some guardrails on it, that has to be siphoning off renewable power or just power in general. And even if you say like there aren't effects on our local rates, if they're doing it all over the eastern slope, let's say, and there are stipulations that they have to use a certain amount of renewables, how do you see that affecting, you know, where you're sourcing power that we get here? And like, I guess it's just a cost question. Yeah.
It's a cost and it's a deliverability question, Commissioner. Right now, what you're seeing in the data center space is a rush to scale as the hyperscalers, the Metas and the OpenAIs and all the folks of the world are training their models on as much data, using as many GPU, chips, as much energy as possible. There's kind of an arms race going on, and I think that's what you've seen in the Salt Lake City circumstance. We would not be able to compete in that arms race for a variety of reasons. We were talking in terms of megawatts. They're going to talk in terms of gigawatts. Already, even some of the larger utilities, including XL, are struggling to come up with the hundreds of megawatts of generation at a time to support the data centers that are currently in XL's queue over on the Eastern Plains. And the grid upgrades that would go along with it. Certainly not on the timetable that these large hyperscalers are trying to get their data centers squared away. We also have expensive land. We don't have any water. Our fiber, while better, isn't as great as it is in some metropolitan areas. So all those things are factors that lead me to believe that the Salt Lake City style project, where it's 40,000 acres, probably isn't coming our way. But over time, once that scale has played out, and it now becomes more about how quickly can I respond to your Google search, your Copilot, your this, your that, we're going to see a shift away, in my opinion, from size and scale in the training models to speed of response in what we call the inference models, right? The things that have been trained and are now deployed, those are going to come into the community. And they're going to be much smaller data centers that are going to be a little bit like the switching stations for the cellular network, the substations for the power system. They're going to be more local, and that's something that's coming your way. If you look at our analysis, we've got some headroom, particularly if we can keep them operating outside of that 2-week window where we see the peak capacity, if there's some flexibility in how the data centers operate, or if there's batteries that can take the strain off the grid during that peak time that sit next to the data center, sitting next to the substation, we can start to be smart about how we accommodate that growth, which is really what it's all about. And I could put crypto, I could put grow house, I could put any form of industry. The good news is we have done this in the past with loads that are in that 10 to 20 megawatt size, and we're reviewing with our board, in fact, in 2 weeks' time, the policies that we have in place that govern that kind of deployment to make sure that we're ready for those sorts of things from the data center standpoint if they show up.
It might affect, if they're being built with rules that say it has to be renewable power, and you're still striving to get north of 85%, I just see it's got to, there's a capacity limit on all of that, no?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It depends on how,
Okay.
right? How we would resource those renewables. I could argue that a bump in load that I could demand, that I could count on, actually creates more headroom for the bigger projects that we're accustomed to getting, that are pretty standard, versus the little remaining headroom that we have between 85 and 100 that really shows up when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining. So it's not always there every day, all day, right? Where a data center is a different kind of demand on the system. We can certainly talk about this with graphs and data offline, but it sort of matters how as much as it matters what. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be impossible to serve a data center that needed to have 100% renewables any less than it's impossible to serve SkiCo if they add new gondolas, new lifts, and they say it has to be all renewables through our peer program.
Okay. I was on chat using Watts here, just looking at Jeffrey's acronym, and chat determined that the most sustainable airport in the world, it's a good name, but a literal acronym is technically correct, but completely unusable. And they didn't have advice for an
I could have told
improvement.
you that.
We
So
have a few of those.
MSAITW needs to be, we need to rework that one.
We have a few of those at Holy Cross too, to be fair. So,
Mr. Gardner?
Thank you.
Any comments? You want to join us?
No. Thank you for asking.
Can I ask one last
Closing comments.
short comment regarding the demand charge for a buck per kilowatt? I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. What does that mean for your typical user? It's going to be under $50 or what? I'm trying to. I looked at the chart and I thought, I see the staggering.
Right.
What I'm wondering is where does that dollar kick in, and how is it reflected? If I've got I don't even know. Is it based on the load going into my house? So I don't even know how to describe where that dollar gets brought in.
right. So the meter is measuring the flow of electricity from the grid to your home in this instance. And there's a rate that meter measures of how fast the electricity is moving across.
Right.
And that's expressed in kilowatts. And we measure that all the time. And when we add up all the individual measurements of how much electricity is flowing, we get the kilowatt hours. So 1 kilowatt used over an hour, that rate over
right.
the hour is 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. And that's what you get charged the 11 cents for.
Right.
The demand charge now looks at the rate every interval over the course of the month. And it says, all right, give me the maximum rate in that month, in that billing period. Give me the maximum rate that Greg Postman used electricity during that month. Sometimes you might be using 1 kilowatt rate. Sometimes you might be using 5 kilowatts or 10, right? Sometimes you might be doing a lot of things with electricity, but you might be supporting that with your own solar and your own battery so that your rate is 0 or even negative because you're flowing and exporting back to the grid. We take the maximum amount of that rate, that kilowatt of demand, that peak demand over the course of the month, and we multiply it times $1. And that's what shows up as the demand charge. on
Okay,
your
so
bill.
if I'm running at 5 kilowatts, and that's my
It'd
peak
be
rate,
$5
you're gonna charge me
in
$5.
that particular month, and then the next month starts or the next billing cycle starts, and it resets again.
Okay.
That's why we have this chart. If you're able to stagger it so that you can avoid being at 5 and you can instead be at 1 or 2, right, which is kind of the resting load of an average home, then you're saving a few bucks on the bill.
Copy that. Okay, thank you for that. That helped.
Wrap up comments. Anything we missed?
Just no, thank you for A, your patience in my 45-minute homily. B, your interest. It's super important. It's important for us to make sure that we're providing our services in a way that meet the needs of your constituents and the folks that live here in Pitkin County. And so we love having the opportunity to come and visit with you and ask these questions and throw out some ideas. And I'm happy to come back. Any of us are happy to come back anytime in the future. I also want to thank you for the partnership. Mr. Chairman, you referred to the microgrid and how we need to do much more. My engineering team would flog me if I didn't say, let's get the current thing up and running, and then we can talk about the next phase. And our staff is working with yours even right now to make that happen, and we look forward to seeing you out there with us for commissioning that in the very near future. That, Basalt Vista, we talked about bus fleets. There's so many ways in which we can work together, and I would just say, please, please, please continue to extend that hand. We'll extend it back, and we'll keep doing great things together. So thank you for having us, me,
Thanks for coming.
and we'll see you again soon, I hope.
Wonderful
I
to
do
see
have
you.
a comment. I'd
Come
like
on,
to
come on
offer.
up,
Come up.
join us.
No, it's just really quick.
The-
We're
You have to
doing
be on
all
the
this as
mic.
a not-for-profit
And
rural
sir,
electric
sir,
cooperative.
we need
can't-
you to
we
speak
can't
in the
hear you if
microphone
you're in
for
the
You have to
public
talk in the
record.
mic, Bob.
The
So
microphone,
annoying.
not the voice. Thank you. I'd just like to point out that Holy Cross is a not-for-profit rural electric cooperative. So if we make money more than we need to pay our expenses, we return it to our membership. And that's a very unique kind of utility, even in the light of municipals and the investor-owns that serve in this vicinity.
And Director Gardner is one of 7 on the board of directors. We have our annual meeting coming up on the, help me, it's the 11th. I was going to say 10th and be off. On the 11th at the Four Eagle Ranch over in Eagle County, but we'd love to see folks from Pitkin County come out. Like you are to your constituents, Director Gardner is the elected representative of the members of Holy Cross. And so please share with him as well as with us any concerns, ideas, creative thoughts you may have on how we can serve better.
Excellent.
And another demonstration of that democratic formation that we hold so dear is there's currently an director election process going on right now for this area, which is called the Southern District, which is roughly Basalt South. And there's a contested election, so you might want to check into that, as well as there's one in the Vale Eagle District.
Wonderful.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks you all for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for
And-
coming.
Anything else, gang? Thank you for what you do.
Camp
By the way,
lights.
they were affirming, as anything you said, they were affirming. You could see the 3 smiles in the back, which was great. So we appreciate you being here.
I see something.
Yeah.
Just a shout out to the Pitkin County staff. We're working. They're a great group. And Mike, you got to come up here and commissioners, you may not like what you've unleashed
Mike,
here.
good to see
Yes, exactly. I'll keep it to 45 minutes. But I just wanted to thank Kara, Ryan, Michael Port, all the folks. You guys have a lot of stuff going on. Microgrid, there might be a little airport project going on. Really keeping us in the loop from the get-go on this, and which has been really great. A lot of housing stuff too. So just wanted to give them a shout out.
Thank you.
Yep, they're
Thanks,
awesome.
thanks, Mike.
Okay,
Good to see
I'll
you.
stop there.
Now, we're going to go talk data centers and legislation next, so. Thanks.
All righty.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, thanks, Brian. Mr. Gardner, thank you.
Thank you.
Always informative.
Levi, we got you 26 minutes. It's impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Good to see you. How many days left in the session? 8, thank you.
That guy that was sitting next to me, I remember, he's from Texas. He was involved with that fire in Texas. Not from Holy Cross.
It didn't seem like.
Took me a while to figure it out, too.
Yeah.
It's all yours. It's all yours. Please go.
All right, Levi Borst. I'm a management analyst in the manager's office here with a legislative discussion. This may be our last for the regular session of 2026.
Whew.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're already looking forward to the next one, so
I'm sure.
at least one of us might be. So as we mentioned, there are 8 days left. The session wraps up a week from tomorrow. And I've not updated the 687 pieces of legislation, but I'm sure it's more than that now. I can think of at least a handful since 2 weeks ago. You've seen this list of upcoming attractions in the past. The one addition I would throw on for your attention is July 17th. Legislative proposals will be due to CCI for next year, so it's never too soon to start thinking about your Christmas list for what we want to do in the next session.
And are we west or mountain with CCI? I never remember.
I never remember either.
Good.
One of the
Okay.
two.
Okay, we're going to one of those 2 dates as well that's not on here.
It's part of the CCI 6-1 through 3 summer conference.
Okay.
So
No, there's a separate meeting, which is CCI West, where Mountain meets outside of that conference. So we meet as a region.
okay.
Should
We'll
be on
get
this
that out.
calendar.
This is a list of bill trackers that you've seen before. And without any further ado, I want to jump into this, being kind of unsure what sort of discussion it might spur. We remember the board taking a position of opposed to Proposition 175, which was taking a bunch of funding from the general fund and assigning it to transportation or road dollars. And our legislators, specifically Rep. Basenecker, introduced this bill on Friday, which is kind of a contingency hedging of bets sort of bill from the legislative side that looks to neutralize Proposition 175 if it passes. So what it proposes to do is to reduce gasoline excise tax, special fuels tax, and road usage fees, essentially to the degree that the funding for 175 just wouldn't be there. So it would make it kind of a lame duck proposition. I think the idea is that it frees up some Tabor surplus to backfill the general fund of the money that would be missing as the gasoline, special fuels, and road usage dollars go away. So to call it a shell game is probably the nicest way to put it. I think it's a legislative hedge on a ballot initiative. And I'm not sure what else to really talk about that. I think there's some concern about this being the legislature's attempt to, I guess, contradict a potential voter approval of this proposition. So it kind of puts the legislature and voters at odds. If the voters say, yes, we want to pass 175, who is the legislature to negate the intent of that vote? So I think that's a pretty real concern. There are some concerns about whether or not we would still get all of our HUTF funding, despite proponents saying that we will. The first version of the fiscal note was released this morning and it was incorrect. So we're not really sure yet if we would still get those dollars. And then, of course, if there's any kind of economic slowdown and state revenues go down, then this Tabor overage used to backfill the general fund might well not be there. And so that paints the state's budget picture from worse to even worse in years going forward. And so whether or not we believe counties and CDOT will be held harmless as part of the backfill, I guess, is an exercise of a leap of faith right now, but that's how it's written to be, at least in this bill. So, CCAT, the governing board decided to monitor for now, and CCI, I forgot to update this, just took an oppose about an hour ago. So CCI is in oppose to this bill, not Prop 175.
And CC4CA?
That's interesting.
They have not weighed in yet,
CC4CA did weigh in the bill analysis.
but I don't think the CC4CA membership has taken a position.
So CC4CA was recommended position was TBD, leaning towards support on the bottom of their analysis.
Right, but we haven't had a meeting to discuss this, and as far as I know, they didn't exercise urgent protocol to take a position until LegCom meeting, which I think might be tomorrow.
So, given there's 7 or 8 days left in the session, given our original opposition letter to Prop 175 looked at healthcare impacts, K through 12 impacts, higher education, workforce impacts, and other critical services. So given we oppose Prop 175, I would ask that this board at the least look at a monitor, given we will not reconvene until a week from today. So we don't really have an opportunity as a board to reassess. Monitor would keep us in the room. So professionally, we've met with, so we've met through CCAT with Basenecker, Sirota, and Amabile on several occasions through CCAT. And I would be comfortable, I think we'd be the outlier if we were support right now. Given the error in the fiscal statement, it's very difficult to come back and say we'd like your full support. But I believe with this much time left in the legislative session, a monitor would keep us at the table as a county. And I think I'd be comfortable with Pitkin County representing us in that fashion. In terms of CCI's no, it was a very one-sided conversation with even the contract lobbyist not weighing in defense of 1430 or against Prop 175. And so it seemed like it started off swayed towards in one direction. And so they included in the conversation that Rep. Basenecker, even he in his conversations has said, this is not wonderful legislation. But again, if you talk to Kids First Colorado, if you talk to the city of Aspen, the concern is healthcare impacts, K through 12 impacts, higher education and workforce impacts. Those have not changed from 175. I don't believe this is changing the will of the people. I think this is saying, you know, we can still have roads, but these are critical services given the funding shortfall at the state level, just having balanced the budget from 1.5 to 0, sweeping another $1 billion, if you will, out of healthcare, schools, and K through 12 is not in the best interest of the citizens of Pitkin County. So again, I would argue for either a monitor or a support.
I'm fine with monitor.
I'm fine with monitor. I mean, I think support is challenging just because it was rushed and it was clearly hard to get, you know, an answer on what it would mean. And I think if you look at the CC4CA breakdown, it has a lot of questions. Like they could still both pass.
Yeah.
it's almost like there's an attempt here to call a bluff, maybe get one. I think there's just a lot of unknowns. So it's not without risk if this passed, but I think the idea behind it is the right intentions, and that's, I think, the important part.
And again, even if 175 passes, it's not funding what we want to fund in terms of roads. So the other thing to add to this conversation is it doesn't fund multimodal. It doesn't fund EV charging. It is brought forth by the Asphalt Association of Colorado. It is about using petroleum to line roads. So, while I appreciate the board leaning towards monitor, if this was the middle of the session, monitor would be great. I'd be also comfortable with the support, given we're basically 1 week out from Synodia. So,
Does that, listening to that,
I can support it.
like support, because with the time remaining, monitor is kind of kicking the can.
I think it's a little too weird to support it, to have the legislature prepared to annul something that the voters, I don't want 175 to pass, but I just think it's weird to pass something ahead of election day. If we really want to counter what happens on election day, we should do it next year. That's what I think. So I'd rather monitor.
To build on what Ted just said, I think part of why Basenecker thinks that this isn't a great bill, I think speaks more to it's not a great situation that we're trying to respond to. And I think it's been pretty widely circulated that a big motivation for this bill is to get the proponents of Prop 175 to pull it. So
It's a
just
threat.
as you said, it's kind of calling a bluff, or what did Kelly say today? It's putting counties in the middle of a game of chicken, which I thought was a nice way to put that.
Yeah. So it's tough. It would be great if we could just make sure 175 didn't pass, and that would solve everything. But I don't know. I don't actually have the right answer here. It's like I'm listening to both, and I think I appreciate Jeffrey's take that we don't have a lot of time to wait on a monitor. So I'm inclined to support.
I would say, do we know any of the next timeline over the next week between now and Tuesday?
it's in,
It's in committee today.
It's in committee as we speak.
Today, yeah.
So,
I guess one thing I would bring into the conversation, and Levi and I haven't had a chance, I know that we just shared this 1430 with our finance team, just to get a sense of what are the actual impacts to Pitkin County. I don't think they have had a chance to review that. I understand if you all want to lean to support, we can come back and bring that information back next Tuesday, depending on time, or try and get that and share that out with the board. That doesn't help you necessarily if you want to go into support now, but I just want to bring that in, that I know they're trying to understand if you wanted to be in that support, or if it does pass, what kind of, we're hearing forecasts at the state level, what that impacts. What is that impact at the county level? We have not had the chance to really vet that through of 1430 specifically.
Your point. I appreciate that, and I would also say I think Pitkin County is a leader in terms of the opposition to Prop 175. We came out of the gate with our opposition letter. Thank you, Levi, for drafting that. It's excellent. It was used as a template by both Clear Creek and Gilpin and the City of Aspen. The City of Aspen is also looking, Kara, at the impact of 1430. So the legal team from the city is also on these emails looking at what's the impact of 1430. So again,
Support. I'm thinking the whole point of this is to impress upon them that it's a bad bill, and we've got the scorched earth response, which is kind of what you need to do if we're trying to make that impression. So monitoring doesn't do anything for me. I can't imagine what the point is. I think when they look at the opportunity to put a gasoline tax reduction measure in front of in front of people, it's probably going to have a knee-jerk support from the population, because gas is really expensive, and that motivates people's decisions. So if we're really trying to get them to withdraw 175, it seems to me we need to come out and say, we're prepared to support this. But, you know, and I also wanted to know, maybe somebody can tell us, how often does something like this come along, where you have you know, a bill that is directly designed to take away something that's, you know, voter-supported legislation. I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened. Probably happens fairly often.
It's happened about wolves several times.
So,
I-
you know, maybe this just is how the game is played now. So I'm thinking, I don't see a downside to supporting it. I'm feeling like, you know, we're trying to make a statement here, and as Jeffrey points out, we're already out in front of this. If we're trying to lead on it, let's lead on it.
I would answer a little bit of yours. I think Francie's showing the wolf. I don't know so much in the state. I think you can see across, you know, you're seeing in California and other, this is becoming more of a common tactic. So
Fortunate.
this is
but-
not how we want to, right? I think everyone has said in these conversations, this is not how we want to go about making policy. Is this back and forth to have someone pull. What I might suggest, because ultimately where you all are aligned, and I think, Greg, what you're saying, and everyone, is there's Prop 175 is bad. It's bad for Pickens County. It's bad for the state, right? And so maybe to your point is, of course, if you go into a support, but then still, not that you wouldn't hit it, but for the public here today to say it's a support of 1430 only because of Prop 175 still being ultimately the goal of supporting 1430 is purely to see Prop 175 being pulled, or an effort that counters Prop 175, right? That's
That's
the
the point.
contingency here. It's not about,
That's the message.
yeah.
One other thing is that I don't really want to reduce the gasoline excise tax or the special fuels tax or the road usage fee. I don't know about the road usage fee, but the first two, I feel like those are worthy taxes, and our budget needs those. We don't need them exclusively for building more roads or fixing roads, but I do think we need those taxes. So, but you know, if you guys want to go support and make a political statement, that's fine. I would not, but that's okay.
Levi, what might be nice is, again, I'm clearly in support. It might be nice to bring Emily Hadaway to the board next time for legislative update. She is the CDOT rep, and so what's really interesting is hearing it from CDOT rather than an advocacy group. And I think she was the clearest one in terms of all the calls I've been on over the past week. She was the most convincing that 1430 is the antidote to 75 to sound like a Bond movie. But it might, I mean, sorry to steal your thunder, but it might be nice to get her. She was fantastic. I think she was, not saying she was better than the legislators or the governor's staff, but she clearly knew each of the fees and each of the, you know, unpacked, if you will, the direction that this could take. I thought she was valuable in the conversation. So.
Getting pretty close to the deadline next week. I mean, are you support?
I'm support. I think
Well, you have
that-
three
the whole
supports.
reason this is being brought forth is to just try to counter 175. And so if we, like Jeffrey's already alluded, if we are where we are with 175, we have to support it too, even though it is imperfect. It's the statement, and the whole reason it got brought forth, they're still shaking it out. So if they're talking about it as we speak, I think they could use a little backup, like, hey, and people actually support the idea behind doing something here, and they can continue to work on it. If there's time remaining, I don't know, but that's why I'm a support.
So you have three support. I don't think we need to deal with it again next week. I don't want to.
You good?
Bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for bringing this.
You bet. So this is another brand new bill, in large part as a result of CCI, Summit County, Larimer County, and a few other public health directors, in response to a governor's office agenda where they were looking to redistrict a lot of our public assistance programs and have the state take control over it. We don't need to belabor too much of this as we sit here, because it hasn't been fully baked yet, this is kind of a plan to start implementation for a cohort model of county administration of public assistance programs. So I apologize that I don't have more details, but a lot of those details just haven't been fully developed yet. So in short, a cohort model creates 12 regional groups of counties that will jointly administer public assistance programs. I think a couple of the key things I would point out is the planning to begin with the support of a third-party consultant starting this July, transition plan next year, and then implementation starting in 2028. Shared services is a big piece of this, so counties can share administrative workloads and functions across these regions and cohorts. The idea being, I guess, threefold of this entire program is to improve service delivery, 1, 2, reduce the cost of administration, and 3, lower our error rates that will effectively lower the amount that the state has to pay in matching funds. So those are kind of the 3 main pieces of this. A lot of counties are already sharing a lot of these services, so this just kind of gives a legislative framework to help formalize that across these cohorts. So I know that Lindsay was working on sharing a lot of these services already, so a lot of these things are already happening, and I think this just kind of propagates it statewide and helps it gain more traction to do what we're already doing, so that's a great thing. The state still maintains the supervisory authority. This would centralize fraud. My understanding is that with this third-party administrator, we would send out effectively an RFP for one agency to take over fraud investigations. Believe it or not, there are a lot of counties that are doing 0 fraud investigation now, which is kind of unacceptable from the state's perspective, and for all of us, I think it probably should be unacceptable. And quality improvement kind of speaks for itself. Data transparency will require monthly public reporting and install a performance framework, unified statewide accountability system with standardized metrics.
What kind of data? What are we talking about?
I think a lot of that is going to be error rate data. So we can make sure that as that rate goes lower, the state of Colorado has to pay less in terms of a cost share. So part of that is due to the CBMS management system, which is kind of a whole other conversation, but at least in terms of county administration of data, I think anything we can do to lower the error rate that we're contributing to is probably a good thing that helps that. I know
But
Jeff.
it doesn't require it's not going to infringe people's privacy. It's just numbers. There's no other information required.
Right. And my understanding is that it would just be the raw data of numbers in this reporting.
Per and perms was always and if Lindsay was here, she'd tell me what those stand for.
What'd you say?
Per and perms, if Lindsay was here, the error rates is what we're basically trying to lower and disclose. So this is in order so that the counties and local governments are not on the hook for errors. We need to reduce our errors is what this is driving it.
And that ties back to House Bill 1.
Yep.
So
HR 1.
Thank you. We as a state need to meet the error rates, and so this is the state's way on behalf of the counties. I shouldn't say on behalf of the counties. State ways. I can't speak to the acronyms, but addressing how to mitigate for those error rates that are now required under House.
So CCI debated this on Monday morning at 8 a.m.? No, Friday at 8 a.m., 9 a.m.? Friday at 9 a.m. And basically, given the stakeholdering at the county level and the work with both CCI and counties over the course of this legislative session, CCI stood in, I don't want to say firm support, but there was no other position to take. Because basically we were at the table with the governor's office. And so through CHDSA, Pitkin, like CCI, should support this bill going forward, given, again, 4 months of work.
This is a really good example of CCI. I think they took a leadership role in this conversation, and they really worked across the aisles with a lot of counties they don't always align with, and played really well with the governor's office to get this far. So, yeah, 4 months, I think it's been an impressive process. So I agree with you, Jeffrey. Thanks.
So, just,
Okay,
you looking for a vote on, or looking for a nod on this one?
If the board would like me
So-
to log
so-
a position of support, I could do that.
that's fine.
And we'll have a lot more details about what this actually means in terms of our boots on the ground as this process develops. And then I will probably bring Kelly in
Yeah.
for all the help I can get once we get more specifics.
Is this another one where you should be looking at the financial impact to the county as well? Because that's not lost on us.
Yeah, we should be looking. I think to Levi's note, a lot of it is going to come out as this in iterations as we start to understand.
Right.
Thank you. I know I'm out of time, so I'll try to be quick with these last couple. An investment performance authority is kind of a creative idea for enterprise fund balances to be invested outside of the state treasurer system. Very quick and dirty, the idea being some folks believe that they can do better than the 6% typical return rates with their fund balances, and so they like to invest outside of that through essentially a financial advisor in hopes to gain higher returns. And those returns would be directed back to counties to help fund CCAP. I don't know that we need to get too wound up with this one. It's a new idea, and we're not really sure what sort of revenue potential there is, because it's impossible to know who wants to invest their enterprise fund balance in this kind of program. But it just kind of landed the other day, and I thought the board might be interested in some of the creative discussions that are happening at the state level about additional funding in the human services space. So if anybody feels strongly about that,
I have nothing to say about this.
I'm happy to take a pass on this one. Again, I think exceeding stated returns is not the goal of government. Safely investing money is. As we sit with our financial advisors every year, I don't think we're looking for excess return. I don't think managing healthcare money to find excess return would be in the best interest of CCAP.
6%'s pretty good return, actually.
higher returns.
Typical return, I mean, so.
High for government.
So we're at, I'm blanking where Fed funds are, 3.5 to 3.75. 6%'s great. The 2 year, I
Exactly.
think, 2 years at 3.90 right now. So 6%, they're doing fine, which means they're using municipal paper and others
And-
to boost the returns. That seems fine.
Higher reward potential comes with higher risk.
Exactly.
So
It all looks
there's
great,
always
it looks
that.
big.
Go ahead. So,
Sorry.
now, 1430, City of Aspen took a support.
Cool.
Just huge.
Yeah, that is huge.
It's good news.
So just last week, Senator Bennett introduced the Public Lands Integrity Act. And this is pretty exciting given the board's advocacy in terms of public lands and obviously opposition to sale of public lands. Quickly, this would make any sale of public lands used in the balancing of the budget process extraneous and ineligible under the Byrd Rule to go through a budget reconciliation process. A lot of words, but it would really hamper the government's ability to sell public lands through something like HR 1. A couple more details in there, but I'm trying to be brief.
Good.
Given the board's engagement with public lands, if this is something that we're interested in reaching out to our delegation, I'm happy to hypothetically have a draft letter that you might look at to see if you like, and we can talk about it later or an open
I
discussion.
would enjoy seeing your draft letter that you hypothetically wrote. And yes, I think the board would, I think "Let's Do It" was the Nike ad from the board table.
Great, I'll leave this with you and we can revisit it later.
Awesome.
And I think we can probably skip the high-level state budget thing for another time. It won't change between now and whenever, so that's my time.
Any testimony required from any of our groups between now and end of session?
Not that I've been asked for. A few of our bills have made a little bit more progress as they work through the process. And I updated position bill updates at the end of this slideshow that I can share with you all. So if you want to peruse these, when you have trouble sleeping later, you can see what changes have happened in the last few days. That's
I'll
all.
read through it all late at night, I'm sure.
I trust you, Francie. Thank you.
I will testify on 5-7 on 155 in House Finance.
Cool.
And then the other one passed that Greg should be thankful, and we should thank Greg for. Wildlife Crossings also passed yesterday, 2 days ago.
That's great.
Yeah,
Where do I have that?
I don't see it.
That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Levi.
Likewise. Thanks, Levi. Thanks for your hypothetical letter.
Well, wait till you read it
You
first.
done yet?
Yes.
Look at this. He's fast.
Thank you.
I feel like a teacher handing out this.
A, A, B.
Step ahead.
This is great. Send it.
Awesome work on this, on 175, on 1430, and thank you for staying ahead on public lands.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, it's your break. Sorry about that.
Why are you apologizing? We got a week left, and we shorted you a little. We shorted you a couple times through the year.
That's all right.
Andorra, we're going to take a Commissioner 9, and we'll be back at 2:45. Good afternoon. Happy Cinco de Mayo, which would be, yeah, I don't need to explain what it is. This is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners. Even Kaya giggled at that one. Man, bad old guy jokes. We're joined by April Long and Ashley Pearl for our second installment of Cavern Springs. So thank you for coming back with some answers.
Yes, I'm happy to. I will just take a few minutes to remind you what we're discussing today, and then we'll go over the points. But if you'll remember, Cavern Springs is a mobile home park located in unincorporated Garfield County near Glenwood Springs, between Carbondale and Glenwood Springs. And they have been listed for sale or been posted for sale for $23 million. We are estimating a $24 million acquisition price, which would include some immediate capital improvements, reserves, capital reserves and operating reserves. And so that number isn't finalized until we complete due diligence. But the Cavern Springs Mobile Home Park is home to 98 units and about 300 people. They're employed all over the valley, but about 50% of them are employed in Pickens County. And they have been working hard to become a resident-owned community, which means that per Colorado law, they have an opportunity to buy the park themselves before it's sold. And they're in the middle of their 120-day allotted period that they have to make an offer, and the seller has to negotiate the offer in good faith. And so in order to make an offer that the seller might entertain, which is, again, their price is $23 million, we've been helping them pull together the financial stack. Part of that stack that's really important is that there is an organization called Thistle Rock, specializes in helping communities become resident-owned communities and provides them with a lot of support in the purchase and then afterwards. They also bring a lender, a CDFI called Rock Capital USA. Even with the below market rate loans that Rock Capital can give to mobile home park purchases, they are limited to how much they can give to each purchase. And if they meet their maximum at the rate that they're advertising right now or anticipating right now, which is about a 7% loan, the repayment that the residents would have on that loan, plus the other loans, would be too high for them to afford to stay there. And so there is a subsidy that's needed in order to bring that lot rent repayment down to something that they can afford. The numbers that I have in front of you are fluctuating. We don't have anything in writing yet. And so if you'll see that our goal is $24 million, the plan is to have Rock Capital as the senior lender. They believe they can loan somewhere between $7 and $14 million at a rate between 5 and 7%. We do have Impact Development Fund, who is bringing at least $2 million to this deal at a rate of 4%. I believe since the last time we talked, some of the rest of the numbers and goals have changed, so I'm happy to explain these more. But we are working with Rock Capital and IDF on the idea of having locals who are interested in doing a below market loan participate in this loan structure. And so we have a goal of an $8 to $10 million syndication of low interest loans from individuals that might be able to support something like that.
How low, what does that mean?
3% is what we're aiming for. We don't have anyone committed to that yet, so this is, again, what we're working on. Mm-hmm. And then our goal would be to have $2 million in private donations from donors, philanthropists, and potentially businesses. And I can talk a little bit more about our business idea. And then a $6 million goal for local government subsidy. So all of that mixing and mingling to try to get to the $24 million goal. Right now for local governments, we have $500,000 committed from the town of Carbondale. And since I spoke with you last, the city of Aspen has committed $2 million. We will be going to Glenwood Springs on Thursday evening asking for $500,000, and their Workforce Housing Advisory Board is making that recommendation to their council at that amount. Snowmass, the town of Snowmass has previously stated that they would be interested in committing about $600,000. Believe that we have updated news that they are going up to $1 million. I'm looking at Kara.
They have committed to.
Yeah.
They have committed to 1 million.
Okay. So we're getting there. I'm very, impressed and pleased and humbled by these contributions that are coming in. We have begun having conversations with donors. Several of the donors that gave to the effort last year are interested in how they can help with this purchase as well. And we have a presentation to a group of donors through the Aspen Community Foundation next week. The idea on the businesses, just really quickly, is that we, last year, when we were working with the other mobile home parks, heard that the businesses really would like to participate, but they would like the opportunity to have a unit within the mobile home park. That doesn't exactly comply with the way that ROCs are typically ran, because they're resident-owned communities. But Thistle Rock and Rock Capital are working with us on this idea that in exchange for a donation or a subsidy amount into this purchase, into the acquisition, we would be able to offer an exchange to the business of a right to offer, a first right of offer. When a unit goes up for sale, they could offer to purchase that and hold it for their employees and rent it to their employees, as long as they comply with the deed restrictions and restrictive covenants that will come along with the local government subsidies. I think that's all I have, and I'll turn it over to you.
I have an update on the Picken County funding picture, but before I go there,
Questions about?
that was a lot of
Yeah.
updates, so if you have questions.
I
for
did
me.
ask last time about whether this could count, these donations could count towards our total number of affordable housing units.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think the answer is to be determined.
Was that a Prop 123 question?
No.
Or a theoretical board question?
That's a theoretical board question.
Okay.
We set a goal before we went out for the housing property tax in 2024 to contribute to depending on how you phrased it, it was 250 units, but there's a little bit of different words depending on which board member you talk to at the time. So whether is it contributing it to or actually owning entirety, but yes, Francie, I think that
And it's not codified, so.
it's not codified. It was a
But
generalized
1, 2,
goal.
3 is a good question.
Yes. Have you dug into 1, 2, 3 more?
I haven't. Whether or not this can count
Yeah.
towards I haven't. Sorry.
The current law on the books for Proposition 123 is that units that you fund cannot count towards your jurisdiction's unit count unless you have an agreement specifically stating between all the parties ahead of time that a certain amount of units are doled out between all the parties. So unfortunately, we didn't have that last time when we supported the mobile home parks. We can explore it this time. And I know Levi was just here. There was a bill or there was some change to that. Did it go through? I don't know. That would have allowed us to claim units differently that were outside of our jurisdiction. So that would have benefited us. That being said, unless we decide to move forward in a different way, we're not currently planning on being able to access Proposition 123 dollars in 2027 because the state requires that if you want to go into this next phase of accessing funds, you have to have a fast track approval process for affordable housing in your land use process, which we don't have, and we're not moving towards that direction.
Okay.
Yeah, the only fast track we have today is for electrification and house size. Sorry, we do have a fast track approval process for both electrification and house size.
It would be it's needed for affordable housing. Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Last time you presented, we did not get DOLA money, so there's no state money coming in for this?
That's correct. We pulled our application from the DOLA process. The DOLA granting cycle doesn't align well with these, doesn't align at all with the time frame for closing an acquisition. Additionally, they require that 75% of the funds be committed prior to their application submission, which was May 1st.
Right.
Another deadline that we cannot meet. And if they if we were successful in receiving the funding and being awarded the grant, they could not guarantee that they could transfer the money before the closing. And so we were going to need a bridge loan regardless.
But it seems like we had the same, I mean, there's a deja vu. I've sat
yes, there
opposite you
is.
the last time we did the.
And it was a deja vu from the last mobile home parks.
Sorry,
And
same question 1 year later.
We have prepared a white paper. We're updating a white paper. We've submitted this to the state.
Yeah.
We've submitted it to our legislators. We've submitted it to the AG's office. We're trying very hard to get changes made at the state so that they can support mobile home park acquisitions in the way that they have intended to.
I mean, it seems like it would be a good conversation with Velasco in the off-season, after Wasena DA next week. So
Yep.
I'd love to bring it back either as a working group or to the board.
Yeah.
But it's sad that we're having the same conversation 2 years in a row.
Absolutely agree. And I've talked now that we were successful in doing this last year. A lot of other mobile home parks in the state are looking to us, and they're in the same position of like, well, how do we get these DOLA funds that are set aside for mobile home park acquisitions? And they're struggling in the same way that we are because their cycles don't line up.
And for the public, again, what do you think the appetite is after this acquisition in terms of, I would say, again, I think we're better aligned with Aspen to Glenwood than Aspen to Parachute. What do we think the appetite is after this from, I don't know if it's an investment standpoint, or where would Pitkin likely invest, and what would the number of mobile home parks, communities that we would invest after this?
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer
I
or
can
you wanna-
start with
go
it,
ahead.
yeah. I put a little bit of this in the memo or the
Yeah.
AIS for you all. You may have seen the staff memo from the City of Aspen staff last month to the council. They did a bit more than back of a napkin, but they did a quick assessment on how many mobile home parks, in theory, might be coming if we start this trend, how many more. They looked at parks from Aspen to Glenwood. And so I noted in my memo that we just haven't had that discussion. You all haven't had that discussion at the board table of, is that the line you would draw?
We initiated it, the discussion.
We did, but as far as having that official analysis, I think, and they drew the line at mobile home parks 60 units and over, I believe, which still leaves a number of mobile home parks, Aspen to Parachute, even Aspen to Glenwood, that are smaller. So April's board, the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, is meeting on Thursday and is voting on a proposal that would have the coalition step in and do a complete analysis of mobile home parks across the Aspen to Parachute, all sizes, to really understand who's out there and who's at risk, who's not deed restricted, who's not owned by a friendly landlord, those sorts of things. And then the board is also voting on whether or not the coalition should take a proactive role in reaching out to these mobile home parks, getting them organized, getting them to understand what it's going to take to become a ROC or do those sorts of things. So I guess we'll wait until Thursday to see, but I would guess the coalition is probably stepping into some sort of longer term role.
Yeah, and I think that what would be important to note, just along the lines of your question, is that we would obviously explore the entire region of the housing coalition. How we, the proactive steps or the recommendations that come out of that, and how we support those and where that support comes from, would be something that we would bring to you all. Here's the report. Here's the analysis. Here's our recommendations. Do you want to take any next steps? Do you want the coalition to take next steps? So I think that there'll be a lot of more back and forth on that when we have a better understanding of the picture.
Asking us if we want the coalition to take more steps. As a member of the coalition, we would be stating our opinion. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah. Or we can, again, depending on how my board decides, but we can just bring information back to you and you can do with it what you want for Pitkin County. Like these are the ones in Pitkin County,
And so, that's not to say that the work the city did isn't useful. It did show that there are 3 parks, Aspen to Glenwood, over 60 units.
Over what?
That are over 60 units, that are at risk of being sold. I think I put in my memo, it seems like we would need a broader, more kind of analytical take on it. Before we draw any conclusions of just how many folks are going to come and ask for help. But I think that's why the coalition stepping in, even for Cavern Springs, is great, because otherwise we get the request directly from folks living in these places, and they're very reactionary, and we're left kind of scrambling to catch up. And so if we could have a big picture, a regional picture, get ahead of things, and then kind of filter everybody through the coalition, I think that's just going to be a better approach for everybody, and we're going to be able to be less reactive, more proactive.
I appreciate that.
No, second. I mean, I enjoy I respect the idea of the communities actually being more proactive in their own future and sort of having their cards lined up before they're approached for a potential acquisition. So,
Yeah, being in the middle of a real estate transaction
yeah.
Right.
is difficult, and the time frame is difficult. So we want to try to do what we can
I mean,
before.
it's a nice service for you guys to add.
Yeah, thanks.
I would hope if we go
Let your
past
board
Glenwood.
member know how to vote.
I would hope if we go west of Glenwood that this board would take a stand that if Garfield County doesn't stand up, then maybe we won't, you know. I mean, it's time for them to stand up.
Should I give a little bit, or any more questions for April, or should I jump into the funding picture from the county side?
Did the price change from the memo?
It didn't. You may have seen 23 million.
That's what I've seen.
That's
yeah.
the purchase price, and we put a $24 million goal at the acquisition price because we set the Thistle Rock model is to set that C Corp, the residents, up with their own operating reserves, capital reserves out of part of the acquisition price.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear from the city memo.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry
What
that you're
happens
seeing
later.
two different numbers, and that number may change because we don't have the due diligence to understand what the capital needs are just yet. So just keep in mind we're estimating 24 million.
Thank you.
So we were here 3 weeks ago, and the board at that time said that you wanted to support this, but we didn't talk about numbers specifically. I put forward a couple different options for you to consider. One was to match any of our other local governments. Another was to take the price per unit that we paid in 2025 for the 2 mobile home parks we supported in 2025, multiply that by the number of units here. And another one was to take into account how the percentage of workforce that work in Pickens County, which is 50%, and then do a per number. And then in this latest memo, I added a fourth choice, I think, just to confuse things, which was a $1.5 million number, which I will say was more based on our availability of funds and where I think the board wants to go with the rest of funding this year. So I want to talk a little bit about that and why that number came out from staff. So as you know, we have the Affordable Workforce Housing Mill Levy. This is the exact ballot language up there. Those 5 bullets are exactly what the voters voted on. It seems like it's all over the place, but it was incredibly insightful for you all to set it this way because it covers the full breadth of the housing continuum, which is kind of from those who are experiencing homelessness all the way up to free market workforce housing. And then it also covers what I kind of have always talked about as the 3 C's in housing. So that's construction of new housing, conversion of existing housing into deed restricted housing, and then the conservation of the existing housing we do have. So we're really lucky that we have the mill levy and that it can cover so many different things. That also, more choices make it harder to decide. And so the way that we've broken this up is in the budget. So we kind of have buckets of spending that align with the ballot language. So for 2026 and 27, which is the budget you all approved, we have money set aside in a specific line item for the Phillips Water Infrastructure Project. We have money set aside for planning and professional services. We have money set aside for capital reserves and the repair and maintenance grant program through APSHA. We have money set aside just into next year for Good Deeds program, and then we have not dedicated any in 28 or beyond. And then we have money set aside for new programs that would address homelessness. So those are all individual line items in the budget. The focus of today is these 2 other line items. So in 2025, we had a line item called Mobile Home Park Conservation. In 26, we didn't put any money in that line item. Where we did put money was in partnerships, which is this more catch-all line item for the board, which includes filling gap funding with any of our partners who may already be building housing and then getting some housing in return. Or just getting involved in, this is really the construction bucket, if you will. It can also be the conservation or conversion bucket, but we had, I think when we set it up for this year, we had envisioned it would allow us to partner with some of our municipalities who have some housing projects underway. So when we look at this potential spend on Cavern Springs, we would pull from the partnerships line item, which you have $3 million budget in 26, and you have $500,000 budget in 2027. Those numbers can change. That doesn't, that leaves a pretty healthy fund balance at the end, but that was what felt like we could still do all the things at the top and have some money left over to support our partners. So I think, Francie, you were the one who asked for a bit more of a, how does this actually impact? This is how it impacts, and that's why staff was recommending the 1.5 million, because to April's previous slide, it would have a really big impact on Cavern Springs and would get us almost towards the goal of what governments want to contribute. It would also leave us about 1.5 million, give or take, in 2026 to still contribute to some partnerships. We are hopefully going to have a housing retreat in June where the board gets to sit down and set some framework around how you use the property tax money and what we evaluate and kind of the long-term vision for that. And I would love to be going into that with a little bit of money that you can still play with in 26 and 27. So I'm trying to hold both for you. It's your budget, but that was kind of the staff perspective, was how can we do both of these things at the same time, which is leave some options open. It's only May. We know more requests are coming, and we know there's some requests that we've said, please wait until after we have the housing retreat, and then we are going to bring them back. So, there's obviously always going to be more requests than we have money. So how do we balance both of those?
Francie?
So all those bulleted items will clean out all of our housing reserves?
No, we barely used any money in 2025 from the mill levy. And so we have quite a bit of money coming into 26. All the top ones, plus the partnership, we end up having,
905,000 still left.
thank you.
900,000 still left?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a healthy balance, but it leaves us with 900,000 left.
Connie said we were allowed to do it.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. And
Not
we
a
are,
lot.
yeah.
sorry. I didn't agree with that statement you made earlier, but
Thank you.
I was going to let it go.
And that includes, that spreadsheet I put in the packet includes the employee housing impact fee, which is a roller coaster of a fund. It's hard to project how much will come in. And so if we do see more come in this year than we're anticipating, we come back to the board and we can ask how we want to spend it. So the fund balance or any of these line items can kind of grow or stay the same depending on what impact fee does.
So what can we do on a Tuesday in terms of committing money to this cost?
So you can direct staff and kind of informally commit it, and then I believe the process that we did how did we do that process? It was after a certain date, then we transferred the money. So it was not a formal decision, obviously, on a Tuesday right now, but you can direct staff to give your commitment level, and then at the point of when the cash is needed, then we would come back in a formal resolution.
Oh, not until then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ends up being a grant agreement with the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. They pool all the government funds and then actually enter in as a lender, thank you for the word.
Lender in fourth position with a forgivable loan.
Okay.
So, couple reflections. I love the no growth solution. I love the no construction solution. Keeping locals local. Not increasing commute times. Preserving existing housing stock, I think, resonates really well. It resonates in the West Mountain Regional Housing Authority. Did I get it close?
Housing Coalition, so close.
MSAITW.
Better than most people.
Thank you. So I think it checks so many boxes for the board in terms of a no-growth solution. My concern, whether it's $1 million or $1.5 million, is, again, it goes back to where there are 3 more asks in 26 and or 27. So when you look at it, really what's in the budget right now, 26, 27 is 3.5 million. So at $1 million, it means we could do a couple more transactions. At 1.5, then we potentially only have 1 left in our quiver. So I'm very comfortable at $1 million moving this forward. I am concerned, though, operationally and the way Pitkin's operating vis-a-vis both the draw site and the rugby field, that we were dancing with quite a few partners, and sort of whoever's the biggest catastrophe that comes in, sorry, catastrophe is the wrong word, whoever comes in and demonstrates a sense of urgency vis-a-vis the way the mobile home park, 60-day window is set up, that we end up donating, if you will, to the person with the shot clock, and not really addressing what is the partnership criteria. And there's an unmet need for both the draw site as well as an unmet need for the rugby site. And those would be Pitkin County projects. And so, the fact that Garfield's a no-show, I mean,
So far.
in a variety of conversations, in a number of conversations. So I remain concerned that we're not funding locally. Again, I appreciate more so today than a year ago the need and the impact that we make in the mobile home communities. I remain concerned that we're putting our local partners in a sort of a backseat position when we do this.
Yeah, I would support the first part of what you said, that this is, I think, the best way to increase our affordable housing stock in the valley without building new buildings. So that's both the draw site and the other one are new buildings. So I feel comfortable with 1.5 million to this, leaving a little bit in reserve in case somebody comes to us desperate for $500,000 or something, or Phillips ends up costing more to do whatever we have to do or whatever. But I do think this is economically, for the number of people, how much does it come out to per person? Do we know? The whole 24 million, it comes out to divided by 300.
You said 98 units. How many people?
But it's 300 people. It is 98 units. I don't know how many bedrooms that is, though.
98 units, it's about 245,000.
Yeah, so we can't build that in any way.
You can't build waste and water infrastructure for that.
Yeah, really.
Per
So,
person, like if you do 300 people, it's 80,000.
yeah. So anyway, it's affordable. They already live there. It's not increasing traffic or anything, and it's right near a bus stop, albeit a local bus stop. I think it's local. So anyway, I'd be okay with 1.5 million, leaving 2.4 million altogether, it sounds like. So, yeah.
Mr. Mann, Commissioner Mann.
I agree with all these comments and that it's a good idea. It should be supported. I'm kind of just, at this point, going back and forth on the number. So, and maybe that's where we all are. I think I mentioned when we spoke about this past prior meeting that it's kind of good to have some sort of set formula, so when the next one comes and the one after that, it's not just the shot clock and here's the number of points you got to score. I just feel like it gives us a little more solid footing to say, like, this is what we've done and this is what we're willing to do.
Yeah, I like that.
So, but going by that, I would say it's option number 2. And that leaves a bit of a gap then, so I don't know.
What's option number 2?
Well, I feel like that was what option number 2 was, rather, which was using a per unit amount from
Yeah.
From the prior offers and calculating it by 50% who actually work in Pitkin County. I'm not sure if that's the best formula, but that is a formula. So I don't know where we all stand on this, but I always have issue with just an arbitrary number being put forth and not having a reason to say, like, this is why we did that number. But that said, I'm persuadable. I think we need to do this in some in some form. And if we need to decide that number right here, you know, I'll go along with what the board wants.
What was the cost per unit last time around?
In 2025, we paid about 22,000 per unit.
22,000.
Bedroom?
That was Pitkin County's portion.
Per-
The
oh.
numbers you had me running a minute ago was
Yeah.
everybody's.
Oh.
24 million. So if you just do I think you were 3.25 million
Yeah,
last
we are
year.
3.25. It ends
Okay.
up being like 22 and change per unit that our contribution went towards.
Yeah.
And we did not distinguish who was in Pitkin County or not. Right?
Okay.
I'd love to, I like Ted's idea that we should have a formula that works, that makes sense.
Me too.
And it should be based on best bang for the buck. If we can subsidize a unit for $25,000 per unit and say, this is our standard, and then they can try to figure out how to make it fit us rather than us trying to figure out how we're gonna fit their program, maybe that will stop the shot clock to some extent. I'm not sure it will. The shot clock wasn't created for us, but it's a creative way. You could start imagining people, you know, using that. But really, what I want to make sure is that it happens, and I want to incentivize Glenwood Springs to come in. If it's been recommended they come in at 0.5 million, that's great. I want to incentivize Garfield County. I know they're in a financial situation that is much different from ours, so you know, who knows what contributed to this predicament Garfield's in, but that's not the issue. The issue is they don't seem to be able to do anything right now. Maybe that'll change, but really the most important thing still is getting the housing and getting the best value for our money. And so that doesn't matter to me where it is. I'd rather buy more units and house more people wherever it may be than worry about a geographic location within reason. So, you know, I'm going to be a proponent for making sure that this project gets done, and you know, so I'd probably be at a higher level, just because I want to be certain that they cross the finish line. So I'm responding to the shot clock, but I'd like to come up with a formula based on. It was very circular. I'm jet lagged. I'm sorry. So
Greg, so before Ted goes, Greg, Ted is on page 171 of your program, and he is on option number 2, is what he is putting forward.
right.
So 1.5 million would be 15,000 a unit. So if we wanted to do that kind of thing where we had.
Do you have a
certain-
slide of your options?
No, but I can
If
bring up
open
the.
to page 171 of our
Yeah.
of our prayer book.
And I,
Well-
go ahead. No, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay.
It's
And
easier.
2 million would be 20,000. So-
So what I can jump in and share a little bit of in response to some of the commissioner comments is, I think staff prepared looking at some kind of similar formula. You know, kind of you all are looking for a formula, but as Ashley alluded, there are still some policy conversations that, you know, this is coming unfortunately ahead of the retreat that we were hoping to do. So,
Right.
you know, we can do a formula, but are you doing it at, you're assuming 100% of those, you know, so it's a $15,000 number, you assume 50% are Pitkin County. There's still a lot of assumptions if you want to use the formula. So that's where what we tried to balance is using some semblance of a formula, but hoping to close this gap, because ultimately any formula, anything you contribute, I know you all are committed to say, we want to make sure we see this happen, is where we came up with the 1.5.
Right.
Speaking a little bit to the other partnership conversations, we have not obviously had those direct conversations with Snowmass or Basalt as follow-up because we have been waiting for the retreat. What I will say is all of, at least the other managers in there, everyone is recognizing the same conversation you all are having, which is we can't build 100 units for 25, or what was the number, for $85,000 or $250,000 a unit. This is to try and replace this as our housing or as our workforce and our community members, we will not be able to do. And so there's recognition there. There's a reason you see a $6 million goal from all of those local governments, because there is collective recognition that this is important, even if it does feel like it's, whatever the most emergency thing is. So maybe I'm just still jet lagged and speaking circular, but I just wanted to address, where you all are talking about wanting the formula. I think we all recognize wanting to get here. We are still in the place of this has come at this moment in time. And from staff's perspective, we feel the 1.5 looks to build off of a formula, close the gap, and still leave room for those future conversations and those partnership opportunities.
Ted?
And I'm good to support. I guess it would be good to think about this in the future moving forward. I don't know that we have to decide it right now. And I don't think number 2, that formula is anything that's really that firm to stand on. I mean, that itself is kind of arbitrary. But I think it would just be helpful, maybe as a housing retreat item, to try to figure out something so that we can have it sort of standardized. I am in agreement. I mean, I'm impressed the city went with $2 million. I think that's, and I was reading in their packet, I think they determined 42% of the residents work in the city. They obviously just said, well, 2 million's fine. I kind of guess I want to walk back what I'm saying. Like, we want to do this if 1.5 is what is needed, if that's not even what the city's putting forth. If Snowmass stepped up as they have, I think that's motivating as well. And this might put a fire under, the bottoms of those down in Garfield and Glenwood.
It might.
It might. Maybe it won't. So, I don't want to say that I'm firm on this number 2. I just like the idea of coming up with something for the future that makes it a little easier to get a ballpark idea of what we're willing to do. So,
April, and then back to Francie.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the conversation that you all are having. What I anticipate, if my board approves that the Housing Coalition move forward with this research and analysis, like you, I really like the idea of a formula. We're talking about a proactive approach, so I imagine that there would be some kind of analysis on, like, here's what we expect, here's what it would take to save it all, or whatever, and I'll have the person working for me would break this down into some tables so that we could collectively begin to look at it from how does everybody participate in a way that is a viable solution for us. And so I just wanted to offer that, yes, I see the same thing, and we would, instead of you all banging your heads on the wall trying to do that, that's what we would try to do for you.
Yeah.
Francie?
I'm not sure that 50% that work in Pickens County can be part of any formula, because 42% work in Aspen. So that leaves 8% that represent unincorporated Pickens County that is not already being covered by Aspen. So it doesn't really work to use that number in our formula. It works in terms of going to Garfield and saying, look, only half of these people come to Pickens County and Aspen. That it works for that. But I don't think it works otherwise, because we're really only at 8% that isn't already covered, and that is not very much. So just saying. The old Venn diagram where
I think we're enjoying the circles. I think we're going in circles. I'm comfortable with either 2 or 3 moving forward. They're both fine. Again, I'm more concerned with leaving powder dry for the next conversation that's going to happen in Q3 or Q4, because that's where the financial world is right now with this.
I'm good with 2 and 3. I'm good with probably 3.
I'll be a 3 vote.
So, and to circle back though, I think on this one, the city of Aspen wants to be the lead. So I think they did take charge and come out with a beautiful number to support this. So much like we were the lead in the last round. So, that's what neighborhoods and communities do. Am I hearing consensus around 3?
I'm okay with 3.
Yeah, you got direction. We've got 6 minutes left to go even.
To be clear, you're okay with option 3, which is with a
1.5.
commitment of 1.5 million?
Yeah, thanks for
And
reiterating.
not a commitment of 3 million.
Thanks for reiterating that.
I could have taken that the other way and just started advertising it, but I thought we should be clear.
We're only allowed handshakes in work sessions, so yeah, sorry, I was trying to.
Thumbs up to come back with us with those.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot to land, and thank you for the conversation. It's a little bit strange because we won't do anything formal until hopefully we get the rest of that funding stack that April put up.
Right.
And then we would come and do quite a bit of, if you remember last time, we were in front of you 5 different times or something with all these different readings. And then it gets very real if the deal is moving forward. So if we have any updates in the meantime, we'll share them with the board and go forth.
Thanks for your leadership on this.
Thank you all. This is amazing support, and I know it's not easy to do things like this when you have lots of competing needs. And so we appreciate it, and the residents will be really happy to hear.
And thank you for the background numbers, Ashley.
Yeah, no, thanks for the diligence on this. Appreciate
Can't
it.
make decisions without them, just so you know, for the future.
Gotta have the data.
I just wanted to know the corgis had nothing to do with my decision.
They couldn't even see the corgis. I brought backup in case we didn't get anywhere.
Do the corgis need to make their debut?
Yeah.
Put 'em up on
They're
the-
like,
really?
they look more like, there they are.
Dora's got them. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Awesome. All right.
I love them.
Shows how
Thank you for the
stimulating
time.
conversation is.
They're very royal, you know.
They're so
Corgis are very royal.
Yeah.
Not that we care about
Right?
royal in this country, but
They're the sweetest. All right. Thank you.
So in April, if you could
you.
find 40 million for
sister
Shoshone
does. She's
as well,
obsessed
that would
with
be
that.
wonderful.
so weird.
Oh, yeah?
Oh my God, she knows everything about them.
Working on it.
Yeah,
Creeps me out.
Down to
I
40
think,
million.
I think
Oh, really? Who's-
Congressman
I seriously
Hurd,
like,
you know,
who's
between now and the end of the
Catherine
year, he
What?
just needs to
You
show up
don't
with 40
know?
million.
I know. He knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been
What?
assigned. Just needs
I
to be
do.
released.
It's a border collie.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good to see
Wonderful
you.
to see
No,
you.
no, I remember that. Yeah.
She probably was all over you when you were there.
So,
Yeah.
future calendars, we do have another meeting after this, so we're gonna move pretty quickly. Future calendars. Additions on the 18th of May, everyone's gonna see in their calendar a request to hang out with Dan Fellon and Michael Buglioni. May
28th.
28th, thank you. May 28th, you should have in your calendar a 10 to 11:30.
About the construction?
The jail tour.
About what?
The jail tour.
Oh, yeah.
28th.
Statutory requirements, Mr. Mann, to tour our facilities.
And it's a great opportunity as part of
see
the
pre.
construction. Yeah.
Yeah,
To see it pre.
cool.
That'll be great.
One addition to the calendar, a BHA grant.
We have confirmed those are in there. You'll see those on the future agendas.
And so, future agenda question for the board, we have 2 hearings for location and extent. For the airport, there is a desire by the county manager and the board chair to leave the location and extent as the last item of the day, even traditionally after the land use items. So, in other words, this is it is the discretion of the board. You spoke correctly. Sorry, I was incorrect in that conversation, Francie. And so it would come back to the board. I would recommend that it is.
Thanks for that.
It would come back to the board, and I would recommend to the board that we would schedule it after even the biannual retreat, so that everyone else in the room that's not there for the location and extent for the airport
Can leave.
can leave. And that we as a board have already committed, but I'll reaffirm to the public that we will take comments limited to 3 minutes as per public comment on both the 13th and on the 27th. That there was a request at P&Z to extend that. I don't think there's any desire from the board chair to extend beyond 3 minutes. As everyone who's been giving testimony this year at the state has lived to, we've been generally been given 2 minutes, which is basically 28 lines of text. And there's a countdown, and they keep you to it. So 3 minutes, we believe, is generous, and we will stick to that board protocol. Sorry for the long-winded explanation. Everyone's
I
comfortable?
support you in
Comfortable.
not extending it.
Yeah, and everyone's comfortable with that being last, which is not protocol, because usually we would do land use last.
I think it's a good idea. Is there any issue with changing that?
We can.
Okay. And then the 2 land use items, I don't believe on the 13th will take long. One
I
is
hope not.
one is a forwarding a recommendation for growth management. The other one is biannual,
Check in.
okay.
Hopefully Bayou will,
Yeah, it is,
Move
it is
smoothly.
a,
kind of like the distillery,
it's
getting
annual,
to the
it's
end
annual.
of our harassment.
It's actually annual review and a tent permit,
A tent permit.
yeah. And I do believe on May 12th, even though we have personnel evaluation, we will likely in exec also have a conversation about going from quasi-judicial to
Executive.
executive. Yeah. And so that would be for the board. And just full disclosure, we have dispatch on the 12th. I did tour the dispatch center and it is spectacular.
The new one?
Yeah,
Great.
it is spectacular.
Jeff Kruger's bringing that to
Um,
us?
Yeah, so we
I
have.
know, isn't that interesting?
Jeff has been the consultant and working on it, but both the dispatch center and the first responder, like there's a 3-story demo tower that does wood fire as well as gas fire, so you can practice. It actually has concealed space practice, and we just lost someone in a concealed space in the valley, so it's allowing
We
for
did?
snow, mess, water, and sand. So it's amazing, and it's worth, I mean, if the board at some point, you know, before, you know, it's still not at drywall downstairs. Actually, sorry, it is drywall, but partitions are not in. It's spectacular. So, anything else on future agendas?
Nothing on my end, other than to your point, in the future, we'll make sure we'll get a site visit down to
We'll mention
dispatch.
what?
We'll get a site visit down to dispatch, but
It's-
that will be a little bit further out.
The cool thing is you're on the second floor looking out, and the elk are just sitting right there, too. It's kind of cool.
The domestic elk.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, you guys eat them, but for the rest of us, they're beautiful.
I don't eat them.
Anything else, future agendas? Board open discussion, we're 13 minutes ahead. We'll add the jail tour.
I have a couple,
Yeah,
and I can
please.
jump in unless others have items.
I'll go real fast. I will testify on hail on Thursday. It's House.
Is it floundering?
It is, it was asked, it was basically CCAT and CC4CA both wanted to go through. It is now in House Finance. And so we did Senate Finance, it's now going to House. There's a fiscal note, so anything with a fiscal note in this legislative session is getting pushback. And so,
Yeah,
again,
of course.
yeah, so absolutely happy to do it on behalf of CCAT and CC4CA and continue our push. Again, it's wearing the Pitkin County hat, but also is formally serving on Wildfire Code Board. And basically, the testimony says, you know, as the Wildfire Code Board, we could address anything have to do with home and structure hardening and site, but we could not do anything to do with hail.
Okay, it's okay with me if you do that.
Thank you.
I like being asked
Oh,
if you're
sorry.
going to represent the board.
I would like to represent the board. We have already taken a support position on House Bill 26-155, sorry, Senate Bill 26-155. So previously asked the board, this is just basically a reiteration of
Thank you for doing
testimony
it.
that we've done before. So, but critical, again, sort of given, we need this one. This is, you've seen articles where the DOI, the Department of Insurance, wants to lower
Yeah.
insurance rates across the state. Levi's here to attest the fact that we may have hail on the western slope before we know it. But really, this is an effort, you know, basically what the testimony says is that even though we don't have hail or we're mapped as low hail risk according to FEMA, we do pay for hail in our insurance premiums in the
Right.
western slope.
Yes, we know.
So, yeah. And if there is an opportunity, I guess while we're all together, given our support vote, I would like the board's permission to move forward on testifying in support of House Bill 26-1430. So, and I'm happy to provide draft testimony to
You
the
don't
board.
have to provide
Okay.
draft testimony to me.
Okay.
Levi's back.
Cool.
You gonna talk to us?
Any other open discussion?
I have a couple of items.
Yeah.
So I do want to highlight, and kind of building off of what Levi shared with the changes for human services I sent to all of you, and it will be coming, but to recognize that Pitkin County Human Services did get the Distinguished Performance Award. I still don't really understand what CSTAT is, but it's something it's basically for kind of just the accuracy and the commitment that our economic assistance team provides. We're at 89% in accuracy, which is huge, especially as we start to talk about error rates and all
It's a
of
B
that.
plus.
Well, in terms of when we're talking about error rates and everything, it's
Yeah.
very high for the state, and so they're one of the top 10 in the state.
Awesome.
And so it's amazing work, and I know that will be coming before all of you for the Board of Social Services, but as part of Lindsay Maish's last day, I also wanted to make sure you all were aware of that accomplishment. The other item, and hopefully this is where Levi can jump into if he needs to. So we have gotten a couple asks for sponsorships for some items that have come up. The first is for Mountain 2030. I almost said 2050. The Mountain 2030 conference, which is in October and is aligned, kind of stacks on top of CAST. We have been asked in the past to be a sponsor.
Idaho.
It's in Idaho.
It's in Sun Valley. I'm going.
Sorry.
And so I think some years we've done it, some years we haven't. I know that the board, and I think staff as well, has seen the Mountain 2030 conference really grow and be something really valuable. So the request is a $5,000 sponsorship. It actually does also provide 2 registrations with that sponsorship level. To be kind of that anchor institution. We didn't budget it directly in the board's budget this year, but for other conferences or travel or in the county manager's, but we do have money in the county manager's budget for that sponsorship if you all would like to
I'm
proceed
very in
with it.
favor of that. I love that conference. I think it's great. And the registration's like $300-400 or something, right? So it's save $800 or something.
Yeah, it is good to,
Was there another one?
yeah, but I wanted to pause there and see if you were in support of those.
We'll have to wait and see what the other one is.
We have 2 members looking to go.
But before we move
two
off of
board
Mountain
members looking to go?
2030, I did talk to Michael about presenting some from maybe OST on conservation as an avenue for environmentalism and stewardship.
Great.
So it'd be great if we did that. I've never heard anybody present on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and we'll work on getting something submitted.
Was it two folks, board and staff, going?
So the sponsorship provides 2
Two.
registrations. I think right
Just
now.
making sure we have at least 2
Yeah,
interested
yeah.
going.
There's at least, I know that there's Francie's going. I think Levi is going. I'm gonna try and go, and
Cool.
I don't know
So
if
we're
other
using-
board
You
members
You
will
usually go. Michael's gone.
Yeah.
It's a good one. People like to go.
So we do have budget, and we kind of talked about including that just in the annual budget because
What are the- what are
we've
the
budgeted
dates?
the registration fees. We haven't budgeted the sponsorship, so we have the funding for that.
What are the dates?
13th and 14th or
Find out how
something
many
like that
people
of
want to
October.
go.
Oh, it's October.
If enough people want to go, maybe we just register a bunch of people and don't be a sponsor. Just wanted to throw that out there. If a bunch of people want to go to this,
I would imagine.
I'd
you'd
rather
go.
we spend the money on registrations.
I think that she's looking it up.
It's the 13th and 14th.
Yeah, of October.
And last year was Bill McKibben?
Last year, I think it was just you and I and Levi that.
No, Bill
No,
McKibben.
Another-
Sorry, we didn't
sorry.
send him.
The keynote,
We
I
didn't
thought
send-
was Bill McKibben.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
was, and he was fantastic.
Thank you.
I don't know if he was called the keynote, but he spoke. He was really good. It was like his 370th or something presentation in a calendar year.
Wow.
It was insane.
His book tour. Anything else? I think you got thumbs up
Yep.
on.
So we'll move forward with
Yes.
that. The other one that has come forward is the Keeling Curve has requested sponsorship from Pitkin County. I think this year they are going to be hosting the Keeling Curve Award in Aspen, which in the past it's been in,
I have no
Idaho.
idea what that is.
hang on, let me get to my email.
It has a new name, actually, but I can't think of what it is. It's Jackie Francis's
It's Jackie Francis'
thing.
group.
It's
The
environmental.
Climate Curve Awards. It's hosted by Seth Meyers this year.
Oh,
And it's July 1st here in Aspen. So this is the award that they do as basically seed funding for various innovations in, I was going to say environmental, that is not, Greg, I'm hoping you can help me out here.
Well, they're looking at innovative technologies, and
Yeah.
they give $25,000 awards to promising startups.
oh,
And they were funded originally by some wealthy guy. I guess they still are to a great extent, but it seems to be expanding, and they're bringing in a comedian to host it and
It's
turn it
basically,
into a more of a bigger public event. I know they're trying to grow it.
it's an award that's used as basically an accelerator for creative and innovative climate solutions and technologies along the way. And there's typically, it looks like, so since their inception, they've awarded over $2.75 million to 80 organizations of various seed funding, essentially, for innovative climate
and
solutions.
they have speakers, they don't just announce the winner, I mean.
They have a guest speaker. I think, as Greg said, this is the 9th annual one, and I think this is one of, at least in recent years, that will be actually hosted in Aspen, and so they are soliciting support from local area
What do they want?
partners. Anything from 2.5 million, excuse me, 2,500 to 10,000, but really what they're looking for is they want Pitkin County's name, so some level of support from Pitkin County.
How do you usually go about these decisions? You just
Randomly.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
the thing is, we were
No
trying
formula?
not to have them come in randomly because they tend to pile up, and there are more. I could think of others
Yeah.
that I'd want to bring in.
one on wolves was another one.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're all worthwhile. It'd be great to support them. It'd be great to be a sponsor. But maybe if we can keep it to a small enough number, then we can do it piecemeal, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kara? What's your comfort level? I want to support Jackie.
Yeah.
Because I know how much effort she puts into all this. And I think it's a good cause. But I can also think of several others, so where do we draw the line, or how do we pick and choose?
So historically, and I think as staff, I feel really comfortable with Mountain 2030 because I think you all have actually vetted over the years, do you want to support that or not? And it's a conference that we go to, and I appreciate the board has been selective of what you lend your logo to, quite frankly, because that's ultimately what is being asked of a lot of times. And so I see kind of the momentum and the support as that conference has grown. That one makes a lot of sense. I think you're right on, Greg. This is a effort that I think in theory the board has been in support of but once you start adding sponsorship opportunity or sponsorship and financial support, it becomes harder and harder to draw the line. But that is also why we budget dollars for all of you, right? And so you do have discretionary dollars. Obviously, a lot of that is set aside for these other pieces, but we have still set aside, and we're still thinking of leaving that $10,000 to $25,000 number for you all for these, kind of sponsorship pieces, because I know it's a place that you've wanted to spend some time. So,
Well, if they can get our support at 2,500, that's what I'd be for, not 10,000. I mean, it's just our name on the program?
yeah, and I mean, I think they're fundraising locally to put the event on, so they're going all
We do give to several water events through
right.
Open Space and Trails, like 3 or 4, I think.
I think
Which
the
we don't
staff
even talk about.
recommendation would be, 2,500 at the most, if you all wanted to support this.
I'll go with that.
At least you've heard of it.
I heard 2.
I'm good with that if that's what's recommended, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You don't matter anymore because we have 3.
I'd love to
Trying
hear
not
your
to give
thoughts.
any poker.
We know.
He blinked his eyes in a work session.
Thank you, and I do hear you of, I think, trying to figure out what is the process for vetting on these sponsorships, but also trying to leave some flexibility, and also trying to leave some dollars allocated, but not being able to
Right.
support, if you all supported everything, you'd be spending a lot of money there.
I'm sure these organizations think we're incredibly wealthy and they're expecting huge sponsorship money.
Those are my open discussion items.
Excellent. Anyone else open discussion?
I have none.
Excellent.
Okay.
I got
Levi, you
nothing.
came down to join us. Anything for open discussion?
Something happened.
No. Just in case the board had a chance to look at the public lands support letter that I distributed a couple minutes ago. I know it's a quick turnaround, but if you have thoughts on that.
I read it. I thought it was great.
I think it's great.
All for it.
To the chair.
We'd love for you to move forward.
Cool.
Sorry, that was body, eyes, nose, everything. Just
That's all right. I'm here for it.
Yeah, great job on it.
Cool. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
All right. Good job.
4-4.
Look at that.